They say we all step onto this earth carrying one question deep inside, but most of us die without ever truly reading it. It's not about who I am. It's not even about where I came from. It's something much more unsettling. What if everything you've been taught about life is simply incomplete? What if the central piece is missing? And what if no one, absolutely no one, can ever hand it to you from the outside? Just think about that for a moment. Everything you've done, everything you've chased, might just be a slow dance around an invisible flame. Meanwhile, the true fire, the one that holds the power to change everything, is waiting, just waiting, to be ignited right here, inside of you. And perhaps finding God isn't some reward reserved only for the saints. Maybe it's not just an illusion for the desperate. Maybe it's the only real way to understand why you even wake up each morning. What if your true life purpose is actually hidden right behind that very question, the one you don't dare to look at directly? Why didn't anyone tell you this when you were younger? Why didn't anyone explain that the most important search wasn't outward, but inward? And the price of ignoring that truth is this permanent, hollow feeling, the sense that something is always missing, even when you seem to have everything. I'm not here to promise you any easy answers tonight. What I offer is much more valuable than that. It's a chance to look deep inside yourself with a fierce kind of honesty, to question what you've always simply taken for granted, to explore the depth of your own cracks and flaws. Not to immediately fix them, but to truly discover if Jung was right when he said, "Where you stumble, there lies your treasure." I want to travel with you on a path that joins two deep roads. First, there is the profound psychology that descends to the very roots of your unconscious mind. And second, there is the ancient spirituality of the Bible, a path that invites you to listen to an old, loving voice, a voice too alive to ever be explained simply through words. And here is the final question, the one nobody ever dares to ask aloud. What if, in the end, finding God is less of a mystical experience and more of an act of radical sincerity with yourself? What if your purpose, that thing you search for so tirelessly, isn't a goal you must conquer, but simply a truth you must remember? If some part of your soul feels a gentle tickle from this question, if there's a part of you that knows you've lived too long on the surface and is now ready to dive deep, then this journey is absolutely for you. It won't be comfortable, it certainly won't be fast, but I promise you this, it will be real, because only what is real can truly transform you, and only those who dare to look at what hurts can ever find what heals. Most of us grow up believing that life has this secret manual, a manual that everyone else somehow received. We watch the certainty of others from a distance, the ease with which they seem to move through the world, and secretly we suspect that we are the only ones who don't understand anything at all. It's easy to think that meaning is a privilege belonging to someone else, that purpose is reserved for those born under some special star. But what if the real secret is that no one, absolutely no one, is exempt from this fundamental search? Not the wise, not the humble, not the believers, and not even the doubters. Even those who appear completely secure are often trembling inside at this essential question. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." It wasn't just a clever phrase meant to impress students. It was the confession of a man who spent his life chasing the shadows and the light that live inside the human heart. Jung wasn't trying to convince anyone to believe in something supernatural. He was simply inviting us to look, with brutal courage, at what truly lives within ourselves. Because right there, in that wild, mysterious territory, is where the God no one ever told you about sometimes hides. Not the God of easy, automatic answers, but the God of uncomfortable questions. The ones that dismantle everything, the ones that call out to you. The Bible, That ancient book that so many look at with suspicion or disdain, often without ever truly reading it with an open heart. It's filled with people who are broken, lost, and fragile. It's not a book about perfect heroes. It's about human beings who stumble, who run away, who cry, who make mistakes. And precisely because of that, they end up finding something that changes them forever. Adam, the first human, isn't just a mythical figure. He is the image of that part of us that wakes up, understanding nothing. The part that hides out of shame, trying to cover its nakedness with leaves and excuses. Eve isn't just the mother of all living things. She is the symbol of intuition, the sacred curiosity that dares to touch what is forbidden. That internal voice that pushes us to leave the Eden of ignorance behind. But what does it mean to leave Eden? Isn't the greatest trauma of humanity that feeling of having lost something essential? That sense of being forever expelled from a home we barely remember. Jung would call this the nostalgia of the soul, that deep longing to return to a lost unity, to find a truth so real that it can sustain us, even through the longest nights. The Bible calls this the thirst for God. You can call it whatever you want, but if you listen closely, you will recognize that thirst in your own story. Think about it. How many times have you felt that life must be more than just working, paying bills, and meeting other people's expectations? How many times, right in the middle of your routine, has a small, weak, but insistent voice asked you if you might be losing something absolutely fundamental? Some people drown that voice out with noise, but there are others, like you, who decide to listen. That is the first miracle. Daring to hear the question. That's where the real search begins. Finding God. Discovering your true purpose isn't some luxury or a far-off dream. It's the urgency of a life that can no longer tolerate the lie of superficiality. It's the sheer necessity of meeting yourself face to face without any disguises. The good news is, you don't have to be perfect to begin this journey. You don't have to know how to pray, or have faith, or follow any rituals. You only need to bring your truth, exactly as it is. Bring your doubts, your wounds, and all the weariness you carry. That is enough. And right here, another question arises. How do you even begin searching for something as vast as God? Where is the map? Where is the signal? Where do you even start? Jung once said that the unconscious is like a deep, deep sea, a place where ancient symbols float, sacred images, and dreams that aren't just dreams. They are messages. The Bible, in its own way, is also full of dreams. Joseph dreamed of stars and sheaves of wheat. Jacob saw a ladder reaching up to the heavens. Prophets heard voices in the profound silence. Maybe this isn't a coincidence at all. Maybe the true encounter happens when you finally allow yourself to hear the signals emerging from your own internal abyss. Don't be afraid. You don't need to understand everything all at once. It's enough just to be willing to look inward, to let the mystery question you, to simply accept that you don't have all the answers right now. The real spiritual journey begins the moment you dare to recognize your own ignorance, and instead of hiding it, you treat it as sacred. Because only a humble heart can truly receive what pride will never, ever grasp. Stay with me. The path has just begun, and the only requirement is honesty. Everything else, the truly important things, will reveal themselves little by little. Just like the light softly entering a window when you decide to open it for the very first time. Imagine for a moment that you could stop the world. Not the external world, the one with clocks and traffic lights, but your internal world. That silent universe spinning right behind your eyes. If you could pause that incessant flow of thought, the judgment, the fear, the expectation, what would appear? What remains when everything finally goes quiet? Some people fear that silence, believing that on the other side they will only find emptiness. But the truth is different. Right at the center of that apparent void, a presence often sprouts. A whisper, a quiet feeling that you are not as alone as you once thought. Carl Jung spoke about the luminous presence, that strange, profound experience where you feel surrounded by something greater, something inexplicable, a force that observes you and yet calls to you from within. This isn't a God of rigid dogma, but an experience so real that sometimes it can be truly frightening. Jung himself felt it in his dreams, in synchronicity, in those small, everyday miracles that force you to ask, is all of this really just chance? Or is there a secret meaning woven behind everything? The Bible is filled with moments just like this. They aren't spectacular fireworks or grand miracles, but tiny disruptions of the sacred right in the middle of ordinary life. Moses was simply tending his sheep when he saw a bush burning that wasn't consumed. Jacob was running away, exhausted, and used a stone as his pillow. It was right there, in that moment of absolute vulnerability, that they dreamed of angels moving up and down between the heavens and the earth. Nobody was actually looking for a revelation. That kind of realization only finds you when life has stripped you of all your defenses. But what exactly do Jung and the ancient prophets have in common? Both of them understood that the experience of the divine doesn't belong to temples or to religions. It's something that happens in your deepest, quietest intimacy. The place where the sacred appears is almost always a threshold, a boundary between the known and the unknown, between fear and trust, between what you can control and what simply is. And it's right there, at that exact threshold, where your true purpose begins to reveal itself. Let me ask you a question, one you might have never been asked before. When was the last time you felt something sacred in your everyday life? I'm not talking about grand miracles or blinding visions. I'm talking about that 1 second when a song made you tear up, that small instant when the smell of coffee suddenly reminded you of childhood, or that look from a stranger who seemed to recognize something deep inside of you. These small moments are not random. Jung would call them synchronicities, flashes of meaning right in the middle of all the chaos. They are subtle signs that there is a secret dialogue happening between your soul and the world around you. Perhaps all purpose begins with the simple act of recognizing these quiet signals, because only those who learn to listen to the invisible can truly sense the direction they are meant to walk. The scriptures, they are full of questions, not absolute certainties. Where are you? God asks Adam. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asks the blind man. Authentic spiritual searching doesn't start with answers. It starts with questions that disarm you and open up space for something completely new. And here comes the challenge. Do you dare to stop searching for answers and simply allow yourself to feel the question? Jung said that the biggest obstacle to encountering the divine is the fear of our own depth. Because down there, in the deepest part of yourself, it's not just the beautiful things, it's also our shadows, our wounds, everything we have denied or hidden away. But that, strangely, is exactly where the miracle happens. When you stop listening to the noise and finally sit down across from your own darkness, you suddenly realize you are not alone. There is a presence there that holds you. It doesn't judge you. It simply is. Sometimes, finding what you call God isn't about discovering something new at all. It's simply remembering what was always there. It's not about adding anything. It's about letting go. Letting go of the masks, the external demands, the loud voices that pulled you away from your deepest truth. The Bible calls this returning to the first love. Jung called it the reunion with the self. That part of you that always knew, that was always present, that never stopped calling to you, even when you forgot how to listen. What if your life up until this moment has just been the start of the journey? What if the real adventure begins right now? The moment you decide to look inward, moving past your fear and past your habits. You don't need to understand everything. You only need to be here. Be present. Be open. The rest, I promise you, will unfold on its own. There's a secret almost no one admits. Most people are truly terrified of being alone with themselves. It's so much easier to fill life with noise, with goals, with relationships, or with endless tasks, than to simply sit alone, close your eyes, and ask, "Who am I when no one is watching?" Yet right there is the threshold. It's the difference between an automatic existence and a life filled with purpose. Jung understood this. He wrote that the great tragedy of modern life isn't evil, it's superficiality. That deep fear of diving in, of swimming in the turbulent waters of your own being. Because there, and only there, can emerge what the ancients called the voice of God. Have you noticed that in the Bible, the great encounters with the divine always happen during moments of total crisis? Moses runs away and ends up lost and alone in the desert. Elijah, even after major victories, hides in a cave, convinced that everything he did was pointless. Even Jesus, before starting his mission, retreated for 40 days into the desert, facing temptations, doubts, and crushing solitude. The desert isn't just a physical place, it's a metaphor for that inner state, where we are left without resources, without certainties, and without anyone to applaud us. It is there, in that total stripping away, when you no longer have the strength to hold up your masks, that something truly new can reveal itself. Jung said the desert is the symbol of individuation, that long, difficult journey where a person sheds everything foreign, everything borrowed, everything that simply doesn't belong to them, just to finally meet their authentic core. It is not a straight path, and it is certainly not a glorious one. It's a process full of doubts, setbacks, failures, and above all, brutal honesty. The one who enters the desert of the soul bravely comes out transformed. They come out with eyes wide open. They come out capable of seeing God where before they saw only sand and empty space. And do you know what the greatest paradox is? That the very thing you fear finding inside yourself, your pain, your mistakes, your losses, is often the gateway to your purpose. Because true purpose is not something you invent, it is something you remember. The Bible tells the story like this. Even before you were born, God had already thought of you. He already knew you. Purpose isn't some external goal you have to conquer. It is an ancient melody that your soul is longing to hear again. But to truly hear that melody, you have to silence the ego's screams. You have to quiet the world's demands and the expectations that were passed down to you. Jung described this with a powerful image. The hero of the inner journey must face their own dragon, that shadow that frightens you, that limits you, and yet simultaneously protects you from seeing your own truth. Only by walking through that shadow can you finally touch the hidden treasure. Let me ask you this just for a moment. What shadow have you avoided looking at until today? What part of yourself are you afraid to acknowledge? What story haven't you dared to tell, even in the quiet of your own mind? Please don't see that as weakness. That, exactly that, is the sacred material with which the divine works. Gold is always mixed with mud. Light is always mixed with darkness. And only the one who dares to look at the ugly, the broken, the incomplete, can truly understand the secret beauty that lies deep within all beings. Scripture is full of stories about imperfect people who were embraced by the divine precisely at their worst moments. Think of Jacob. After deceiving and running away, he is left alone beside the river, struggling with an angel all night. He leaves that fight wounded, yes, but also blessed. He leaves with a new name, a new identity. Jung interpreted these stories as symbols of that internal journey. Only the one who dares to wrestle with their own contradictions can truly be reborn. Maybe that is why you are here now. Perhaps all your exhaustion, your endless searching, your doubts, and your tears have been the secret preparation for this very moment. Not to make you into a different person, but simply to remind you of who you always were. That is the silent miracle that unfolds when you surrender to the inner journey. What felt like exile transforms into home. What seemed like failure is revealed to be a seed. What felt like the absence of the divine becomes the exact space for the encounter. Don't rush this. You don't need to understand everything today. Purpose, just like the divine, rarely screams. It usually whispers, and only the attentive heart can hear it. Stay with me now. The best is about to be revealed, right where you least expect it. Perhaps the biggest mistake of our time is reducing the divine to an abstract idea, a concept to argue about, or maybe just a tradition we only run to in moments of crisis. But the truth that burns and sets you free, is that the divine is not just a name. It is not just a word to comfort frightened children. It is a living experience, radical, and completely transformative. But still, that experience only happens when you dare to truly lower your guard, when you let go of control. Carl Jung called it the descent into the unconscious, a voluntary surrender to that internal ocean where, among dreams and symbols, the presence of the sacred can manifest without asking your permission. Have you ever felt like you were right on the edge of discovering something immense? But then, right at that moment, you got distracted. You put out that fire with some excuse. You convinced yourself it was just your imagination. We all do this. There's a part of us that fears the grand, the truly real, because it knows that meeting the sacred means losing certain securities. The Bible is filled with scenes where the chosen ones, upon hearing the divine voice, feel fear. Moses stutters. Jeremiah says he's too young. Mary asks, "How can this be possible?" Meeting the sacred is never comfortable. It's a call to leave the old things behind, to release that borrowed identity, to open up to the unexpected. But what happens when you accept that call, even if you're trembling? This is the precise point where deep psychology and true spirituality embrace each other. Jung believed that every person, at some point, is confronted with an internal crossroads, either staying on the surface, living according to external mandates, or daring to cross the threshold and discover your own personal myth. This myth is not some fantasy. It is the secret story your soul came here to live, the melody that distinguishes you in the middle of a million anonymous lives. The Bible speaks of this when it narrates the story of Abraham. He was living peacefully in his land, surrounded by certainties, until a voice tells him, "Go out from your country and from your father's house to the place that I will show you." They give him no maps. They promise him no easy roads, only a simple promise: I will make you a blessing. That leap into the void is the beginning of every encounter with God and with your true purpose. Because purpose is not found where you feel comfortable. It is found where the ground is shaking beneath your feet. Jung observed that life, when lived with honesty, gently takes away all our false certainties. Sooner or later, what isn't real simply crumbles. Relationships, beliefs, images of yourself. This is not a punishment. This is preparation. Only the one who dares to let go can truly receive. Only the one who empties themselves can be truly filled. The Bible teaches this again and again. The manna falls in the desert, you see, not in the city. Light shows up in the darkness, not in the safe places we already know. So, if it feels like everything around you is falling apart right now, don't see it as a curse. Maybe this is just the beginning of a much greater blessing. Maybe your soul is finally ready to stop surviving and start truly living. And it's exactly at that point, when you don't know where to go, when you can no longer pretend, that the voice of God, that ancient, quiet voice that was always there, finally starts to become audible. Purpose, then, isn't some far-off goal or a trophy you have to win. It is the natural result of a life that dares to listen and respond. It's what happens when you say yes to the calling, even if you don't understand the whole path yet. It's trusting that meaning reveals itself step by step, like a trail that only lights up when you take that very next step into the dark. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be strong all the time. The true encounter with God and your purpose is first and foremost an act of humility. It's allowing yourself to be guided. It's allowing yourself not to know. It's allowing yourself to be vulnerable. That, and only that, is what opens the door to a new life. Few things are as frightening as looking in the mirror and not recognizing yourself. There are days when you find yourself acting, speaking, making decisions as if you were reading someone else's script. It's a strange sensation, almost like your own life feels foreign to you. Carl Jung called this the mask, the character we create just to be accepted, just to survive, just to fit in. But behind that mask, one question always lingers. Who am I really when no one is watching, when I just allow myself to be what I am? The Bible captures this tension perfectly. Peter, one of Jesus' closest disciples, swears eternal loyalty, but in the critical moment, he denies everything 3 times before the rooster crows. It's a painful symbol. All of us, at some point, have denied what we love most, for fear of losing the approval of others. We've all betrayed our purpose for fear of rejection. But here is the turn, the mistake, the falling down, the betrayal. They are not the end of your story. They are simply the starting point for true transformation. Carl Jung saw the shadow, that part of us that makes us uncomfortable, the things that cause us shame, the things that hurt. But it's not an enemy. It is actually the guardian of our deepest treasures. The shadow holds the creativity we deny ourselves, the strength we suppress, and the longing for truth that makes us afraid. If you look at history, look at the great stories. Those who finally embrace their shadow find a completely new identity. Moses was a fugitive, a killer, when he heard the voice of the divine. Paul was actively hunting people until a light struck him down and completely changed his direction. No one ever meets their true purpose without first walking right through their own darkness. The real question isn't whether you have a shadow, it's whether you dare to look at it straight on. What is it you are running from right now? Which emotions, which thoughts, which memories do you prefer to keep buried? How many times have you felt something deep inside begging to come out, but you hold it back because of fear? Fear of what others might say? Ignoring the shadow won't make it disappear. Quite the opposite. It grows stronger, deep in the dark. Jung taught us that real freedom only comes when we integrate that shadow. And this is where the magic happens. What you saw as your biggest weakness suddenly becomes your greatest gift. Scripture tells us that human weakness is the favorite place for divine strength to show up. My power is made perfect in weakness, the sacred tells Paul. This isn't just cheap poetry. This is an invitation to stop fighting against your own nature and start making peace with every single part of who you are. Because the sacred isn't looking for perfect people. It looks for sincere hearts ready to grow. And it is in that messy process of integration that your true purpose finally begins to emerge. It doesn't come from the outside. It doesn't rely on anyone else's approval. It can't be bought or sold. It's born from the meeting of your own truth and the grace of the sacred. It's an internal fire now. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need permission. Perhaps that's why the great turning points in the Bible never happen in temples or in busy, crowded town squares. They happen in solitude. They happen at night. They happen right in the middle of a crisis. Jacob wrestles completely alone until the sun comes up. Elijah hears the divine in a whisper, barely audible. Jesus prays in solitude before taking his great step. Solitude, when you finally embrace it without fear, becomes the secret workshop where your purpose is forged. So I ask you, do you dare to sit quietly with yourself, without any distractions, and just listen to what your soul is trying to say. This isn't an intellectual exercise. It is an act of radical love. Maybe you'll cry, maybe you'll laugh, maybe you'll feel fear, or maybe just a great sense of relief. But I promise you, in this honest space, something crucial starts to wake up inside of you. A new way of seeing, a new whisper of hope, a new sense of purpose. Purpose isn't a career path. It's not some grand result or an answer you can just memorize from a textbook. It's simply a way of being in the world. Present, authentic, connected. It is the deep courage to live aligned with your own truth, even if everything else around you feels shaky. It's that sacred gift of knowing, even if no one else understands, exactly why you keep walking. Stay with me on this journey. The beautiful truth is, what you are looking for is already looking for you. The only door left to open is the door of your own raw honesty. They say the meaning of life is an enigma, a mystery that no one ever fully solves. Some chase it through accumulating achievements, others seek it in love or through spirituality. But eventually, most of us wonder if we aren't just chasing illusions. Carl Jung noticed something profound. The modern human, though surrounded by comforts and advancements, often lives tormented by a subtle emptiness, a lack of meaning that nothing external can fill. This is the sickness of our time. Too much having and too little being. The Bible, far from giving us magical formulas, offers us a paradox. He who tries to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for love will find it. This gives us a crucial clue. Purpose isn't a prize for those who achieve the most. It is the natural consequence of daring to let go. It is the simple result of living in tune with something far bigger than just yourself. So, how do we achieve that? Jung said that every person is called to discover their own personal myth, that unique story that only you can truly embody. It's not about finding greatness in external, boastful terms. It's about allowing life to express something absolutely unrepeatable through you. It's a jeweler's work, patient, intimate, done completely by hand. The Bible shows us that the chosen ones weren't the perfect or the most powerful. They were simply the willing. Abraham, Moses, Mary, David, they were all ordinary people who responded to an extraordinary invitation. It wasn't about their merit, it was about their pure availability. But there is one subtle, stubborn obstacle that stands in our way. Fear. Fear of making mistakes, fear of being judged, fear of failure, fear of being utterly alone. Jung saw it in his patients, and he saw it within himself. What we are most afraid to look at deep inside is often exactly what we need to discover the most. The Bible puts this fear into a simple, yet utterly revolutionary phrase. Do not be afraid. That simple phrase is the most repeated line in all of Scripture. That's not a coincidence. Sometimes, fear disguises itself. It pretends to be logic, or maybe prudence or responsibility. It whispers that we should wait for the perfect moment, wait for absolute clarity, wait for permission from everyone else. But your true purpose doesn't wait for ideal conditions. It reveals itself right there, in your imperfections, in your vulnerability, in the shaky steps of the person who dares to move forward without any guarantees. There is one question that can truly change everything. Are you living your life, or the life that others expect of you? Jung once said that every single time we betray our inner calling just to please others, something inside of us dies a little bit. The Bible tells this story with King Saul. He had everything required to succeed, but he lost his way because he wanted to please everyone else. Everyone except God. Everyone except himself. True purpose cannot be negotiated. It must be honored, even if it hurts, even if it makes you uncomfortable, even if it leaves you feeling lonely sometimes. And this leads to a beautiful paradox. When you dare to live faithfully to who you truly are, you don't just find meaning for yourself, you become meaning for others. Your life, with all its wounds, becomes a living source. Your search, your honesty, your transformation, they inspire those around you, even if they never say it out loud. The Bible calls this being the light of the world. Jung called it being the realized self. Different words, but the same deep reality. When you finally stop running from who you are, your existence becomes a silent testimony. It becomes a living invitation for others to find themselves too. Maybe that's why you are listening right now. Maybe without even realizing it, your soul has been preparing to stop living a borrowed life and to start living a true life. The process might be slow, it might hurt, but the reward is immense. The deep peace of knowing that no matter what happens, you are exactly where you need to be, doing what your heart came here to do. There is no perfect map for this journey. There is no recipe. All there is courage, humility, and surrender. That is enough. And if you get lost, if you doubt, if you fall, remember this. Even the greatest figures in the Bible got lost, they doubted, and they fell. And it was precisely there that they found their connection. Just keep taking steps with me. Every single move, however uncertain it seems, brings you closer to what truly matters. Life, when lived from a place of purpose, stops being a heavy burden and instead becomes a sacred offering. I know there are days when life just feels like a simple sum of chores, commitments, and endless little obligations. You wake up, you repeat the motions, you answer messages, you check the boxes. And somewhere between the coffee and the exhaustion, a suspicion sneaks in. Maybe something is slipping away. Maybe there's no secret melody hidden behind all the noise. Maybe there's no story bigger than just simple survival. Carl Jung once said that the soul hungers for meaning, just as the body hungers for bread. Ignoring that hunger only leads to sickness, anxiety, apathy, chronic dissatisfaction. The Bible talks about this hunger too. In one of the most mysterious and symbolic stories, Jesus says, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." It's an invitation to search for nourishment in the invisible, to feed ourselves not only on what we can touch, but on what we can sense. But how do we even hear that word? How do we pick out the voice of God, or the voice of meaning, from all the internal and external noise? Jung insisted on the critical importance of symbols, dreams, and intuitions. They aren't just whims or distractions. This is the way the deep part of us communicates when our logical mind just isn't enough anymore. The Bible is filled with stories where the divine reveals itself through the unexpected. A burning bush, a faint whisper, a dream in the middle of the night. Have you ever dreamed something that felt more real than being awake? Have you felt a sudden certainty, an inexplicable hunch, as if something or someone was whispering to you from deep inside? Jung called this the transcendent function, that secret bridge between your consciousness and the divine. It's where your personal story weaves itself into the larger story. From this viewpoint, the purpose of life isn't something you have to manufacture through effort. It's something you simply recognize when you allow yourself to listen. It's as if it already exists, just waiting to be remembered. That's why moments of crisis, pain, or confusion are often the most fertile ground where meaning can sprout. The Bible shows this repeatedly. Joseph is betrayed and sold into slavery, and from that very abyss, the plan begins to emerge, the plan that will eventually save an entire people. Ruth, a poor foreign widow, finds purpose and dignity, right when everything seems absolutely lost. Perhaps the key is simply stopping the search outside for what can only be found within. It's not about blind effort, it's about loving attention. Jung suggested keeping a journal of dreams, of intuitions, of moments that move you without any obvious reason. The Bible calls this keeping it in your heart. Faced with mysteries and challenges, Mary didn't run outside searching for answers. She meditated on all these things in her heart. What if your life is actually full of tiny signals that you've just been overlooking? What if God, or life, or the great mystery is trying to speak to you in the smallest details, in the simple, everyday things? Purpose, then, isn't a bolt of lightning tearing the sky open. It's just a soft light that, little by little, illuminates your path. Perhaps no one ever taught you how to listen this way. Maybe you grew up believing that only special people can hear God, or that the meaning of life is a secret reserved just for the wise. But you know what? The Bible contradicts all of that. Think about them. A shepherd, a carpenter, a fisherman, an outcast woman. All of them. In their simplicity, they were chosen to experience something extraordinary. Why? Simply because they were attentive, available, open. Do not underestimate the wisdom that already lives in your own heart. Don't be ashamed of your questions, or your sensitivity, or that deep longing for something more. That, precisely that, is what makes you a seeker, a pilgrim, someone who is capable of discovering things that others will never see. And if you ever feel the routine suffocating you, or that meaning is hiding, just stop. Take a breath. Make a pause. Close your eyes. Just listen to your breathing. Ask your soul, what am I missing? You might not get an immediate answer, but I promise you that if you keep listening, purpose will begin to draw itself out. It's like a figure slowly emerging through the mist. Stay close. Every small fragment of your life is an essential piece of the great mosaic. Meaning reveals itself to the one who dares to look beyond the surface. Maybe the hardest thing to accept is that meaning, that highly sought-after treasure, rarely appears in the grand moments. No, it is found in the invisible details of the day-to-day. We live waiting for gigantic signs, for miracles that break the routine, for answers that arrive with trumpets and bright lights. But the God of the Bible is not the God of the big stages. He is the God of secret encounters. Go into your room, close the door, and pray in secret. Your Father, who sees everything hidden, will reward you. This is a deep invitation to honesty, to interiority, without witnesses. Jung called this the return to the center. For him, the self, the center of the human being, is where the sacred dwells. It's the place where your external personality and your deepest life meet. They reconcile. Everything we do when we search for meaning out there usually pushes us away from this center. But when you dare to return to your own heart, the answers begin to surface, not as cold, abstract ideas, but as felt certainties. The Bible tells this beautifully with the story of Elijah. He was running away, exhausted and depressed. Elijah expected to find God in the earthquake, in the fire, or in a powerful wind. But God revealed himself in the whisper of a gentle breeze. Jung felt the same way. His greatest revelations never came in the midst of success. They arrived in solitude, in doubt, when he felt completely lost. It is right there, when we finally drop our guard, where the luminous is allowed to enter. Have you noticed how many times we look outside for what is truly beating inside of us? We have been taught to conquer, to obtain, to demonstrate. But the soul, well, the soul has a different kind of logic, you know. It asks for stillness. It asks you to listen. It asks for truth. The meaning of life, that intimate meeting with the divine, they rarely show up in noisy places. They happen right when we finally allow ourselves to stop and ask, what is my heart asking for right now? We have to admit, it's not a comfortable question. Maybe at first you'll only receive silence, or perhaps what emerges is just tears, or exhaustion, or even fear. As Jung warned, No one finds themselves by looking into a clean, polished mirror. You find yourself in one that is fogged up by your own history. You have to dare to look at the confusion. Let the mist speak a little before it clears. And right there, slowly, the essential things will begin to emerge. The Bible calls this walking by faith and not by sight. What does that mean? Trusting the process, even if you don't see the end, even if you only have enough light to take the very next step. Think of Mary. She said yes to an impossible calling, without knowing how the story would unfold. Abraham left his land without a map. Moses returned to Egypt only carrying a promise. They all felt afraid. They all doubted. But they all learned that purpose doesn't reveal itself all at once. It reveals itself while you are walking, in simple trust, in the capacity to pay close attention to the small signs. Perhaps the deepest faith isn't believing in dogmas. Maybe it's just trusting that meaning will be revealed. It is revealed to those who dare to live awake. Jung called it synchronicity, those perfect moments where something out there responds to a very internal question. And in that instant, you understand that you are not alone, that a secret dialogue exists between your soul and the universe. When you look at life from this place, it becomes a sacred adventure. You don't need grand signals. You don't need celestial voices. All you need is the courage to simply be present, to live each day as if it were an altar, to honor what is simple, what is small, that which only you can feel. And like that, little by little, purpose stops being that distant enigma and becomes an internal music, a music that accompanies you, guides you, consoles you during difficult nights. It is a soft certainty that even if you don't understand everything right now, you are exactly where you need to be. Don't rush. Don't demand perfection from yourself. Meaning arrives for those who know how to wait and look with an open heart. Just stay. Revelation very often is just a matter of patience and tenderness. There is a deep, secret beauty in that which simply cannot be controlled. We live obsessed with planning, anticipating every move, as if certainty could ever give us true safety. But the soul operates on a completely different logic, doesn't it? It flourishes when we surrender. It grows through vulnerability. It reveals itself only when we finally let go of the control and learn to trust. Jung called this the surrender to the unknown. It's that brave, quiet gesture, letting go of the steering wheel and allowing something larger to carry us. The Bible repeats this lesson constantly. The figures in those stories, they weren't architects of their destiny, they were simply pilgrims of the mystery. Think of Abraham, Moses, Mary, Paul. They all learned to say, "Let it be," to surrender to what they simply didn't understand. This isn't some passive resignation, though. It's an active trust. It's the deep knowing that life, when lived from the heart, will reveal the path to you, step by step. Have you ever noticed how much anxiety swells up when you try to keep everything perfectly under control? How fear just intensifies whenever you demand guarantees before you even take a single step? Jung said that the soul simply suffocates in rigidity. Water, to reach the ocean, must learn to flow. It has to go around rocks. It has to adapt to the terrain. Purpose is like that. It's not a fixed route, but a quiet, patient dance with the unknown. Maybe nobody ever told you it's okay not to know. It's okay to feel afraid. You don't need faith made of steel to begin. All you need is a humble openness, a tiny crack, just enough for the light to get in. The Bible says, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Jung would say that real change never comes from monumental effort, but from those small internal movements, the honest decisions we make in the silence. But there's one more thing we need to clarify. Surrender is not giving up your dignity, your limits, or your voice. Quite the opposite. It means you stop fighting against the current of your own deepest self, and you finally allow yourself to be guided by what your soul truly, deeply desires. In the Bible, the divine never cancels out the personality of those it calls. It empowers it, it transforms it, it makes it more whole. Jung saw the exact same thing. Individuation, that process of becoming who you truly are, is both a return home and a quiet opening to the mystery. What if purpose isn't something you have to manufacture, but something that simply happens when you stop forcing things and finally start listening? What if the divine reveals itself not in the perfection of your plans, but in the simple honesty of your surrender? Deep down, the meaning of life is less a single answer and more a relationship, an unbroken conversation between your soul and the mystery that lives within you. When you finally accept this conversation, something shifts inside you. You no longer need to have all the answers or try to anticipate every turn the road might take. You become a student, a traveler, a quiet companion to the unknown. The fear doesn't vanish, but it loses its grip on you. Uncertainty is no longer a threat. It becomes fertile ground where something new can slowly begin to grow. The Bible, in the end, isn't really a book of certainties. It's a book of trust. Its characters walk in the dark. They stumble. They fall. They get back up. And with every single step, they discover they are not alone. Jung, in his later years, wrote, "My life is the story of the self-realization of the unconscious." And perhaps that's all that is truly expected of us, to let life, through our honesty, through our quiet surrender, simply realize itself, to unfold, to express itself completely. Don't rush. Don't try to skip steps. Purpose, much like faith, grows only in patience and in deep listening. Allow yourself to be gently guided. Allow yourself to be surprised. When you live this way, life becomes an everyday miracle. There is this tiny, almost imperceptible moment when fear quietly shifts into humility and humility blossoms into trust. It's not a dramatic change. It's not a movie plot twist. It happens right in the middle of the everyday. Maybe while you're washing dishes, maybe while you're driving in silence or walking alone down the street. And suddenly, you feel that something is with you, something invisible but utterly real. That presence doesn't judge, it doesn't demand anything, it simply is, and it holds you up. The Bible calls this presence Emmanuel, God with us. Jung would call it the self, that deep core full of meaning that lives inside every human being, connecting us to the totality. You don't need to be religious to feel this companionship. You don't need to recite ancient formulas or even try to understand all the mysteries. Sometimes, all it takes is an honest sigh, a quiet surrender, a question whispered out into the universe without needing an immediate answer. It's in that openness where meaning slowly begins to seep in, like a sliver of light coming through a crack when you thought everything was total darkness. Jung noted that many people come to therapy looking for an external solution to their suffering, but they quickly discover that the problem, and the way out, is found only within. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about accepting yourself. It's not about eliminating the pain, but about letting the pain speak, allowing it to become your teacher. The Bible, with its ancient wisdom, expresses this in the prayer of the Psalms. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Meaning is not found in avoiding the valleys, but in walking through them, accompanied. Have you ever felt that your questions were simply too big to ever be answered, or that your wounds were too deep to ever be fully healed? I understand that feeling. But Jung and the Bible agree on one essential truth. What looks to us like an abyss can always be transformed into a bridge. When you embrace pain, gently and with patience, it transforms. It becomes a quiet doorway to something sacred. So often, the real purpose of life isn't to eliminate suffering, It's to discover that something beautiful can still bloom right out of that very soil. If we look at the teachings, we know no one ever promised a life without trouble. What we are promised is companionship, meaning, and redemption. Carl Jung would translate this into his own language, saying, "I am not interested in human perfection. I am interested in wholeness. And wholeness is simply embracing everything that you are without pushing anything away. It means allowing yourself to be both shadow and light, both falling and flying, both doubt and faith." Ancient texts are filled with figures who found meaning right in the middle of their deepest chaos. David, running for his life, wrote the most beautiful psalms, born from his anguish. Job, after losing everything, found himself face to face with a power bigger than any of his explanations. And Mary, her heart pierced by loss, became a symbol of hope for the entire world. None of them asked for the pain, but all of them chose to transform it into a source. Perhaps this is where one of existence's most beautiful secrets hides. You don't have to understand everything to live everything. You don't need certainty to take the next step forward. All that is asked of you is simple: openness, humility, and trust. Meaning is almost always revealed the moment you stop demanding answers, and instead, you start honoring the questions themselves. And through that slow, quiet process, a new strength begins to rise up inside you. This isn't euphoria. It isn't cheap optimism. It's a profound stillness. It is a joy without a recognizable cause. It's a deep, quiet knowing that even if everything is uncertain, you are not lost. Jung called this a significant coincidence. The ancient texts call it grace. Every single part of your story, even the parts you tried hardest to hide, can be transformed into meaning. You are not alone. You never were. There is an ancient wisdom that only reveals itself to those who have had the courage to truly fail. Few things are as necessary or as feared as failure itself. In a culture that only rewards success, image, and speed, the idea of error sounds almost like blasphemy. But Jung warned us, what you do not accept about yourself will control you from the shadows. And the ancient scriptures, in an even more radical way, place failure right at the center of redemption. Peter denied Jesus. David betrayed. Moses doubted. Paul persecuted. And it is precisely from that lowest place, that deep valley, that something new and luminous can finally begin. Why is it that, in the end, what unites us most as human beings isn't triumph, but the wound itself? Think about it. Nobody truly trusts someone who has never fallen. What makes us human, what brings us closer to the sacred, is the simple humility of recognizing our smallness, recognizing our dependence. It's that deep yearning to be forgiven, to be embraced, to be rebuilt from the inside out. True purpose is born where pride finally ends and surrender begins. Maybe you felt shame about your own defeats. Maybe you've tried to cover them up with silence or forced smiles. But what if those very cracks were the secret doorway, the entrance through which the light is supposed to come in? Carl Jung spoke about the sacred wound, that place of vulnerability that, when fully accepted, becomes a source of compassion and creativity. The Bible expresses it with an unforgettable phrase: God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. This isn't a punishment, it's a mystery. Only the truly broken heart can be filled. There is a powerful image in the biblical tradition: the clay in the hands of the potter. We are imperfect vessels, full of scars. But it is precisely because of those scars that we can truly hold and share the living water. The purpose isn't to look impeccable. The purpose is to allow our history, with all its missing pieces, to become an offering. Jung translated it this way: the process of individuation is both a death and a rebirth. It means letting go of what isn't truly yours, letting die what no longer serves you, so that the authentic, the essential, the unique self can be born. There are no shortcuts here. You have to pass through the dark night. You have to walk through the fear. You must cry what needs to be cried. And then, almost without realizing it, one day you discover yourself lighter, more honest, more capable of loving without holding anything back. The Bible teaches that grace is always greater than guilt, that love is stronger than error, that God isn't looking for perfection, but sincerity. Perhaps the purpose isn't to reach the finish line spotless, but to walk knowing that every single stumble can be transformed into a seed. What if failure wasn't an end at all, but simply a turning point? And what if the very thing that shames you today, when placed in the hands of the mystery, is exactly what will give you the strength and tenderness tomorrow to hold others up? The meaning of life is rarely linear. It's a spiral, isn't it? A dance between falling and rising, between pain and comfort. Just allow yourself to be human. Allow yourself to fail. Allow yourself to begin again as many times as you need to. What truly matters isn't how often you fall, but the quiet humility you use to stand back up, and the compassionate understanding you develop in the process. Maybe, in the end, purpose isn't a destination at all. Maybe it's just a way of living, open, vulnerable, always ready to learn. Because, as the Bible tells us, and as Jung confirms, the soul isn't searching for perfection, it's searching for meaning. And that meaning, well, it almost always hides in the cracks, the places where the light manages to get in. There is a kind of tiredness that sleep can't cure. Not a vacation, not even kind words. This is the fatigue of the soul, that quiet exhaustion that settles in when you have fought for too long to be someone you are not. When you try so hard to please others, to belong to a world that sometimes just doesn't seem to understand you. Jung called it the exhaustion of the self. The Bible captures it in the cries of the prophets and the Psalms. How long, Lord? How long must I carry this weight in my heart? Maybe no one has told you this, but that deep tiredness has a hidden purpose. It's not an enemy you need to conquer. It's a signal you need to listen to. It's your soul letting you know that the time has come to finally drop the masks, to stop running from yourself and to return to what is essential. Because purpose sometimes isn't found at the peak of effort, but in the deep rest of someone who finally dares to stop. The Bible is full of these sacred pauses, the seventh day, the Sabbath year, retreats into the wilderness, moments where even the bravest person must sit by a well and just breathe deeply. Jesus himself often withdrew alone, to pray, to listen, to reorient himself. That wasn't avoidance, that was wisdom. Jung insisted, no one can hear the inner voice if the noise outside never stops. This exhaustion, then, is an invitation to silence, to listen, to reconnect. What if, instead of fighting the tiredness, you learned to embrace it? What if, instead of feeling guilty for not being able to do more, you saw your weakness as a sacred doorway, an open door to what truly matters? Maybe purpose isn't revealed when you are at your best version, but when you surrender, when you admit you need help, when you allow the divine, call it whatever you like, to hold you and renew you. Jung observed that great personal transformations almost never happen during euphoria. They happen in the void. It's when everything seems lost, when you have no strength and no direction, that something new can finally spring forth. The void, he said, is the place of absolute potentiality. And the Bible confirms this. When I am weak, then I am strong. This isn't magic, it's trust. It's the certainty that there is a larger order at work, a wisdom guiding even your pauses and your steps backward. Don't demand perfection from yourself. Please, don't punish yourself just because you feel tired, sad, or maybe confused tonight. Every great seeker, whether you look in the Bible, in history, or just within yourself, They all went through those dark nights, those internal dry spells, those long, echoing silences. It's just part of the journey. It's part of the process of waking up. So, just pause right now. Allow yourself the grace of doing absolutely nothing for a moment. Close your eyes. Just breathe. Listen carefully to the pulse of your own heart. Feel the weight and the sheer tenderness of being alive, right here, right now, in spite of everything that surrounds you. That simple moment of stillness, that might be the very start of a new phase for you. The purpose of life is not some endless, frantic race. It's simply learning to be, to inhabit your body, to inhabit your story, to inhabit your emotions exactly as they are right now. It's allowing yourself to finally rest in the arms of the sacred, like a tired child who finally lets themselves be rocked to sleep. And when this rest has finally done its work, when the silence has gently cleaned away your wounds, you will feel a soft clarity, a quiet, steady strength. It won't be dramatic, but it will be absolutely real. And from that deep place of peace, maybe for the first time, you might hear the whisper of your most authentic purpose. Don't be afraid of the exhaustion you feel. It is only a signal that your soul is ready to be born again. So many people believe that the purpose of life is a final answer, a shining goal at the end of the road, as if there's one magical moment where everything clicks into place and the heart finally stops searching. But the truth is, purpose, much like the divine, rarely reveals itself all at once. It is a progressive revelation, a gentle melody that slowly becomes clearer as you walk, as you get lost, as you return, as you doubt, and as you are reborn. Jung used to say that life is a process of self-discovery, a winding spiral where every single stage brings new challenges, new questions, and new meaning. No one ever truly finishes finding themselves, because the soul is vast, inexhaustible, and always surprising. The Bible tells us stories of people who, even in their old age, keep hearing new calls, receiving new tasks, facing new thresholds. Abraham was called to leave his homeland in his maturity. Moses began his mission when everyone thought it was too late. Sarah laughed when she was told she'd be a mother in her old age. Meaning, then, is never linear or predictable. It is a journey of trust, a quiet, renewed surrender in every stage. Maybe you've believed that it's too late now, that you missed the train, or that your mistakes have closed doors forever. But both Jung and the scriptures insist it is never, ever too late to begin again. The time of your life is not measured by your success. It is measured by your openness, your willingness, and the quiet courage to listen to what your heart is asking for, right here and right now. Behold, I make all things new, God promises in Revelation. And Jung, in his own words, warned us, the unlived life is a disease from which one can die. The only unforgivable thing is giving up the search itself. Maybe your purpose has changed over the years. Maybe it's about to reveal itself in a way you never imagined. That's okay. Life doesn't reward those who never make mistakes. It rewards those who stay attentive to what is emerging right now, in the present moment. Sometimes meaning wears a disguise. It looks like routine, or disappointment, or just repetition. That's where humility and patience do their work. They open up the space, allowing something new to finally bloom. What if purpose wasn't something you had to reach for? What if it was something you could embody in every single instant? What if being true to your own deep truth, right now, was already fulfilling the most profound call of your existence? Jung noted that fulfillment isn't found in grand accomplishments. It's found in the authenticity with which you inhabit each day. Think of the old stories. The kingdom often resembles a seed, a hidden thing, something small that slowly transforms everything from the inside out. Do not minimize these small gestures. An encouraging word, a compassionate look, a respectful silence, an honest decision. All of these are expressions of your purpose, even if the world doesn't applaud them or even understand them. Real meaning is rarely spectacular. It is almost always silent. It is patient. It is fertile. Allow yourself to begin again every single day if you need to. Let life surprise you. Make space for the unexpected. Meaning often arrives in the least expected form, usually right when you finally dare to let go of control and trust what happens. There isn't just one single purpose. There isn't one correct path. There are simply moments of truth, moments of surrender, moments of communion. There are stages of silence and stages of action, seasons of questions and seasons of certainty. The important thing is just to stay alert, humble, and available. The rest, I promise you, will simply follow. The search for purpose can sometimes become a subtle trap. The world teaches us to compare ourselves, to measure ourselves against the success of others. We ask, am I moving fast enough? Have I done enough? Is my path as worthy as theirs? But the soul doesn't understand comparison. What is a mountaintop for one person can be an abyss for another. What heals you might be poison for someone else. Jung warned specifically about the danger of living through imitation. The true privilege of a lifetime is simply becoming who you actually are, not a copy of anyone else. Even the Bible teaches this, though often poetically, symbolically. Jesus never asked his followers to compete with each other. He asked them to serve, to love, to be faithful to their unique calling, no matter how small it seemed. Remember that unforgettable scene? Peter had just denied his teacher 3 times. Then, on the shore of the lake, Jesus restored him. Peter, still trembling, asked about the destiny of another disciple, and Jesus answered him simply, "What does what happens to him matter? You just follow me." That is a true call to singularity, to authenticity. It's a call to stop looking sideways and start looking toward the absolute center of your own being. How many times have you doubted your path just because it doesn't look like everyone else's? How often have you felt small, out of place, strange, simply because you didn't fit into the world's mold of success or happiness? Jung used to say that the root of so much suffering is the disconnection from our inner voice. That wise intuition, the one that knows exactly where you belong and what truly nourishes you. Purpose, deep down, is just relearning how to listen to that voice. It's about regaining confidence in your own inner guidance. The Bible calls this the still, small voice. It's not the thunder. It's not the earthquake or the fire. It's the whisper in your heart that points you to the very next step, even if that step is tiny, even if no one else can see it. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is simply daring to walk slowly, daring to say no when everyone else screams yes, stopping when the world demands speed, waiting when everything inside you screams for a break. What if your purpose today was simply to care for yourself, or maybe to care for one other person, or just to hold a small space of peace right in the middle of chaos? Jung said that every single person has an irreplaceable task, a unique seed to contribute to the world. The size doesn't matter. The visibility doesn't matter. What matters is authenticity. Deep meaning reveals itself in the coherence between who you are and what you do, between what you dream and what you actually choose. The temptation to compare yourself will always be there, but, as the Bible teaches, no one can carry another person's burden. Everyone has their own road, their own questions, their own quiet mysteries. True freedom begins when you stop looking outward and surrender completely to the life you were given. Right there, right in that moment. Purpose stops being some distant ideal and becomes a living, breathing, palpable reality. You don't need to be magnificent to have meaning. You don't need to make noise to be significant. You just need to be faithful to who you are and faithful to what you feel called to do right now. The rest, the sacred part, takes care of multiplying the small things. It gives them shape and depth. And just like that, step by step, day by day, your life becomes a quiet love letter to the invisible. Even if you can't see it right now, someone, near or far, is being touched by your authenticity. Life, when lived from the heart, stops being a straight road. Instead, it becomes a rich tapestry of stories, of meetings, of losses, and of deep discoveries. There are days when everything seems to move forward, and then there are others when you feel like you're slipping backward or stopping altogether without knowing why. But even those pauses, those stumbles, those detours, they can be the essential parts of your purpose. Jung taught that the soul has its own rhythm, and often, that rhythm simply does not match the frantic pace of the world. The Bible, in its deep wisdom, tells stories of people who had to wait. They had to get lost, or even fail, before they could clearly see why they were here. Think about Moses, wandering in the desert for 40 years before he heard his true calling. Or Joseph, betrayed and jailed for years, only to realize that everything he lived through was preparation for something much bigger. Even Jesus lived 30 years in complete anonymity, just in the simplicity of the everyday, before starting his public path. Purpose is often woven into the invisible threads of life. It's found in patience, in the quiet humility of someone who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Jung warned us that the ego, in its desperate need to control things and get quick answers, tends to panic when faced with the slowness of deep life. But the soul knows how to wait. It knows how to trust. It knows how to stay silent until the clarity finally springs forth. True meaning isn't forced. It is received. Just like we receive the rain after a long drought. Have you ever felt like your own life is completely on pause? That everyone else seems to be moving ahead and you're just standing still? No signs, no certainties? Please, don't judge yourself for that feeling. These moments of stillness, of uncertainty, of apparent emptiness, they are deeply fertile for the soul. This is where those inner pieces get reorganized. This is where you hear the whisper of the sacred. This is where your purpose starts to take on a new, much more authentic form. The Bible expresses this using the image of the sower. There is a time for planting, a time for waiting, and a time for harvesting. No one demands that a seed bloom out of season. Jung calls it the time of the unconscious, a secret gestation, a silent transformation that you can only really see once it's fully mature. Maybe today, your true purpose is simply to trust the process, to trust your own pace, to trust the love that holds you up even when you can't see it. Allow yourself the slowness, allow the pause, allow the not knowing. Allow yourself the tenderness of not demanding certainty from yourself. Meaning will arrive. Sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once, but it will always arrive on time. The soul does not compete. It doesn't rush. It doesn't show off. The soul surrenders to the rhythm of life. It accepts the seasons. It honors both the darkness and the light. Purpose, then, isn't a destination. It's a way of living in communion with that secret rhythm, in tune with the unique melody that only your heart can hear. And so, little by little, life transforms into an act of complete trust. It becomes a sacred dance between what you dream for yourself and what the great mystery dreams for you. The modern world constantly pushes us to seek immediate answers, to distrust silence, and to fear emptiness. But both Jung and the Bible remind us that the most important things often bloom in the waiting, in that quiet space between who you once were and who you don't even know you can become yet. Your interior life is like a garden that cannot be forced to bloom ahead of its time. Each stage holds its own mystery. Every season has its own specific language. Maybe you feel impatient right now, frustrated or tired of not seeing any fruit, tired of not having clarity. It is completely okay to feel that. Impatience is only human, yes, but the soul, it keeps its own quiet time. Carl Jung used to write that the life you haven't lived doesn't simply disappear, it just waits. It hides down there, in the basement of your subconscious, waiting for its hour. What you feel is lost or wasted, that can return at the perfect moment, like a seed full of quiet promise. Think about the stories of waiting. They fill the scriptures. Hannah prayed for years and years for a son. Abraham and Sarah received a promise that took decades to become real. Jesus' disciples waited, filled with fear and hope, for a spirit they could never truly control. In these stories, waiting isn't punishment, it isn't failure, it's the sacred school of trust. It's the workshop where faith is quietly forged. It is the very threshold where the old must die so that the new can finally begin to take shape. What if, instead of fighting the wait, you learned how to live inside it? What if you just allowed yourself to be exactly where you are, feeling exactly what you feel, without demanding that life speed up? Jung suggested that the unconscious speaks to us through symbols, through dreams, through those quiet intuitions, especially when your conscious mind lowers its guard and stops trying to control absolutely everything. Maybe the waiting is a time of secret learning, of internal reorganization, of a silent dialogue with the divine. Sometimes what feels like a delay is actually protection. What seems empty is really preparation. Your true purpose may take time, but it will never fail. It is like the river that always finds its path, like the moon that reappears after the deepest darkness. The scriptures summarize it perfectly. Everything under heaven has its appointed time. Give yourself the grace to wait. Don't compare yourself to others who seem to move so much faster. Stop punishing yourself for not having all the answers right now. Deep meaning is usually born in the quiet darkness, in that slow gestation, in silent trust. This is where faith truly matures. This is where hope grows strong. This is where your identity anchors itself in what is essential. Waiting is not passivity, it is availability. It means opening your hands, releasing all those expectations, and allowing life, allowing the sacred, to surprise you at the precise moment. Even in this wait, even if you can't see it, your purpose is already at work. You are already preparing to receive what can only come to a patient, open heart. And when that day finally arrives, when the clarity breaks through, you will feel that it all made sense. Every silence, every question, every tear, every dark night, all of it was part of the story your soul came here to live. Maybe you've never truly realized that your life right now is a sacred work in progress. We were taught to look for miracles in the spectacular moments, but true transformation usually happens in the discreet corners, in the seemingly insignificant routines, in the tiny gestures known only to you and the divine. As Jung said, meaning appears when the ordinary meets the extraordinary. When a simple cup of coffee, a quiet conversation at sunset, or one small act of forgiveness suddenly becomes a place where you meet the sacred. The Bible is built from moments just like these. Think of the boy who offered just his bread and fish, the widow who dropped only 2 small coins, a mother quietly weeping, or even just a simple carpenter working day after day in the same small town. Everything that seems insignificant, when viewed through the eyes of the sacred, holds the seed of eternity. Purpose doesn't always show itself in grand works. No, It lives in your capacity to treat every single moment as a chance for true presence, for surrender, for deep connection. The philosopher Jung once warned us, if we only look for meaning in the grand, we lose our capacity to be utterly amazed by the simple things. The shadow hanging over modern life is chronic dissatisfaction, that restless craving for more that just never ends. But when your soul finally quiets down, when it hushes, it can discover beauty in the everyday, depth in the humble, the miracle hidden in the tiny. The Bible calls this the daily bread, the simple grace that sustains us, the abundance that is born out of scarcity. Have you ever felt that your life was just too simple to matter? Did you think your days were too much the same? Your chores too repetitive? Your story just too common? Let me tell you something. That space, right there, that's usually where purpose is hiding. Not in the applause, not in the crowd, not in being exceptional, no, but in your faithfulness to the present moment, in the simple honesty with which you live out whatever comes your way each day. Jung called it the humble task. Not everyone is called to change the whole world. Some are called only to care for a single plant, to truly listen to a friend, to just persevere in the middle of deep anonymity. The Bible confirms this. The greatest figures were, first and foremost, people capable of loving the small things. Moses was just tending sheep when he saw the burning bush. Mary was likely just washing clothes when she heard the angel's announcement. God shows up in simplicity. Maybe that's why Jesus chose such everyday symbols to talk about the kingdom. The tiny seed, the grain of mustard, the yeast, the lit lamp, the lost coin. All of this suggests that purpose is not measured by external magnitude, but by internal intensity, by the quality of your surrender, by the truth with which you do what you do. Just allow yourself to truly honor whatever you are living, no matter how very small it might seem. Let's celebrate the hidden gestures, the quiet sacrifices, the deep patience that carries you through the hard days. Meaning often grows in the soil of the invisible. Don't underestimate yourself. Every single moment is a chance to embody the sacred. It's a chance to make your life an altar, to realize that the miraculous is often found in the most simple things. Maybe your purpose is simply living each day knowing that nothing is in vain, that everything truly counts, that the ordinary moments are the very stage for the eternal. There's a silent art in learning to truly look again at what has always been right there in front of you. We live in a world that only celebrates what shines, what changes quickly, what grabs attention. To find meaning in the habitual, that is almost an act of spiritual rebellion. Jung called this the awakening of the inner gaze. It is the ability to look beneath the surface of things and see the presence of something larger, something calling you by name. The Bible teaches this repeatedly, through parables, in encounters that seem entirely casual, on dusty roads where no one expected a miracle to occur. Jesus, walking with his disciples, always stopped for the invisible people. A woman who touches his cloak, a blind man waiting on the edge of the road, a child who just has questions. In every single gesture, purpose reveals itself, not as some glorious destination, but as a simple willingness to be interrupted by what is real. It's about being present where everyone else just walks by. How many times have you felt like no one sees your effort, your tenderness, your quiet faithfulness? How many times have you asked yourself if what you're doing truly matters, when there are no applause, when there's no thank you? The answer, even if it hurts sometimes, is this: the deepest sense of meaning does not depend on external recognition. It relies entirely on internal integrity. It relies on that quiet conscience of knowing you have been faithful to yourself and to what was entrusted to you. Jung warned about the danger of constantly seeking approval. When we play that game, we lose connection with our own truth. Purpose, when viewed from the soul, is not an external goal at all. It is a quality of presence. It is a subtle vibration that infuses every action, when that action is done with love. The Bible confirms this in the words of Jesus. What you do in secret, your Father sees. Sometimes life will take you to places where it feels like nothing important is happening. Maybe it's routine work. Maybe it's quiet parenting. Maybe it's caring for someone who is sick. Just day after day the same. Do not underestimate that ground. It is exactly there where true greatness is forged. It is the capacity to remain, to care, to never abandon the small things. Because from a divine perspective, the small is the great. What if the meaning of your life right now is simply to hold the invisible, to trust what only you and God know, to just remain standing in the middle of the everyday? Jung would say this is the path of the silent hero, the one who fights interior battles that no one else ever sees, the one who conquers their own shadows, the one who learns to celebrate simplicity as a doorway to the eternal. The Bible tells the story of Noah, a man who built an ark for years in silence. He had no understanding or support from others, just day after day repeating the same gestures, obeying an inner voice. No guarantees, no applause. And it was that act of secret faithfulness that ultimately saved many. Noah was not a hero for the crowds. He was faithful in the hidden. Allow yourself this comfort tonight. Your life has meaning, even when no one else sees it. Your purpose is fulfilled every time you are honest with yourself, every time you love without expecting anything in return, every time you stay when it would be easier just to run away. This invisible faithfulness, often that is the deepest expression of the sacred in the world. Yes, day after day, without even realizing it, you are weaving a story that transcends what you can see. And one day, looking back, you will understand that the greatest miracle was hidden right there, in the simplest moments. There are nights when, for no reason you can name, you feel the weight of the whole world settling on your shoulders. Maybe everything looks the same on the outside, but deep down inside something is shifting. Something is begging to be heard. Jung used to call these moments calls of the soul. These are times when the unconscious pushes something forward into your awareness, something that needs to be seen, felt, and transformed. It's no accident that you feel uneasy when everything should be fine. Sometimes, that restlessness is simply a sign that your life is just about to expand into a brand new meaning. The Bible tells stories about people who, in the middle of their everyday routine, were interrupted by an unexpected calling. Samuel, still just a boy, hears his name in the night, yet he doesn't understand where that voice is coming from. Moses sees a bush burning but not being consumed while he's just out tending sheep. Mary receives a visit from an angel in the simplicity of her own home. All of them, before that encounter, were simply living their habitual lives. The miracle arrives precisely when we expect it least. But here is the crucial part of it all. None of them were actually searching for the extraordinary. They weren't obsessed with finding their purpose or trying to live a spectacular life. What set them apart was their capacity to respond when the sacred called them, to simply say, "Here I am," even though they were scared, even though they didn't fully understand. Jung would say that true, authentic purpose is born when the ego steps aside, allowing the soul to hear the melody coming from beyond all logic. Have you ever wondered if your own restlessness, your own unease, might also be an invitation? What if the emptiness you feel isn't a sign of failure at all, but rather the prelude to something new that is about to be born? Meaning reveals itself to those who are willing to listen, to those who don't close their hearts to the unknown, to those who dare to just sit with the question left open. Sometimes the answer doesn't arrive right away. Sometimes we need to live alongside uncertainty, to sleep next to the doubt. We have to accept that purpose isn't some neat formula. It is a living process, constantly in motion. Jung compared this to the work of the alchemist. Transformation doesn't happen instantly. It happens in the deep patience of someone who commits themselves to the slow fire of the inner life. Don't be afraid if you don't understand everything right now. Don't punish yourself for lacking clarity. Purpose is patient. Wait. Stay close. Grow in the silence. The most important thing is simply to remain open, to be vulnerable, to pay close attention to those tiny signs that guide you every day. The Bible whispers to us to pray without ceasing, to trust, even when you can't see the horizon, to truly believe that every single night carries a dawn. Jung calls this the art of inner listening, the faith that your unconscious, that deep river where all mystery resides, already knows what you need long before you know it yourself. And just like that, step by step, night after night, your life begins to fill up with meaning. Not because you found grand answers, but because you found the ability to stay present within the mystery. You don't run from the question anymore. You simply allow your soul to speak its own language. Perhaps in the end, the true purpose is just learning to say yes. Yes to the calling. Yes to the change. Yes to the pain. Yes to life exactly as it is. Because when the soul responds with humility and openness, the sacred always finds a way to arrive. One of the most beautiful mysteries of life is this. Even though we constantly search for certainty, what truly transforms us is the sheer experience of the uncertain. Jung often said that the soul truly matures when it can live in the in-between, that ambiguous, uncomfortable space where nothing is guaranteed, but everything suddenly becomes possible. The Bible is filled with stories, full of characters living on that delicate border between what was and what hasn't come yet. They cross deserts. They wait through the night. They hold on to hope when everything seems lost. It's in those thresholds, where the mind loses control, that the heart finally learns to trust. True purpose isn't found on maps, but on unexpected paths, on detours, in questions that have no immediate answer. Abraham leaves his home, not knowing where he's going. Moses faces a sea that is impossible to cross. Mary silently holds the promise of a child when the world cannot understand her faith. Each one of them lives that tension of the in-between, the faith to walk without seeing, the humility to wait without trying to control, the courage to keep moving even when meaning seems absent. Jung saw these moments as a deep passage toward a freer, more profound version of the self. This isn't about resignation, it's about opening up, accepting that certain parts of life simply don't depend on you. And right there, in that surrender, an unexpected strength blooms, a wisdom that you cannot learn from books. The Bible calls this the manna in the desert, enough food for just this day, the absolute trust that what you truly need will arrive in its own time, even if you can't plan every detail. Have you allowed yourself to live in that in-between space, to let life surprise you, to let go of control, to fully open up to the mystery? So much of our greatest suffering comes from demanding things life simply cannot give us, guarantees, certainties, straight paths. But the soul, like a river, finds its flow by winding, by allowing itself to be guided by the unknown landscape. Purpose, then, is not a straight line or a final goal. It is a sacred dance with the unexpected. It is the courage to be guided, the humility to accept that the deepest meaning is far greater than your human understanding. Jung said that true growth happens when the ego finally surrenders, and the self, that profound and divine center within you, takes the initiative. The Bible calls this trusting in providence. It's the simple faith that each day has its own concerns, and every season brings its own quiet gift. Maybe today, your whole purpose is just that, to remain open in that in-between space. Don't rush to close the questions. Don't despair simply because you can't see the finish line yet. Instead, just honor the process itself. Honor the quiet learning, the secret transformation happening right now, even as you walk. Meaning often only reveals itself at the end. That's when you look back and realize that every step, even the most shaky, uncertain ones, had its perfect place in the greater story. Allow yourself to be an apprentice to this mystery. Live in that in-between space with tenderness, with patience, with simple curiosity. Slowly, you'll discover that the truest meaning wasn't actually found in arriving, but in how you chose to walk the path. There is a kind of deep wisdom that you can only learn while you are moving, in those thresholds, in the moments when nothing feels definite. We live in a culture that worships happy endings, neatly closed stories, and clean, clear answers. But both the Bible and Jung suggest that the deep life is much more like a pilgrimage. It's a sequence of goodbyes and hellos, of tiny losses and quiet births. It's a sequence of questions that, when truly embraced, actually transform your heart. Think about the people of Israel wandering for 40 years in the desert. They had no fixed home, no security, no clear maps. Every single day they had to rely on the manna that fell in the morning, the cloud that guided them by day, and the fire that illuminated the night. They had no idea when that promised land would finally arrive. For them, purpose wasn't a destination. It was the way they related to the mystery right in the middle of their uncertainty. Faith was built step by step, trusting that each day held meaning, even if they couldn't see the full picture. Jung called this stage the dark night of the soul. It's that difficult time where the old self no longer serves, but the new self hasn't quite been born yet. It is a painful place, yes, but it is also fertile, uncomfortable, but sacred. It's where everything that isn't real begins to crumble, and only the essential things remain. Anyone who manages to walk through that dark night eventually discovers, when the sun finally rises, that they are stronger, truer, and far more compassionate. Job said it simply in the Bible. "I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see you." Pain can open the eyes of the soul in a way that comfort never achieves. What if your dark night, this stage of deep uncertainty, isn't a curse at all? What if it's actually the secret workshop where a greater sense of meaning is being forged? What if the exhaustion, the confusion, and the sheer lack of control are, in truth, just the quiet threshold of a rebirth? Jung believed that if you dare to simply stay in the darkness for the time needed, meaning will appear unexpectedly, like a seed finally breaking through the earth after a long winter. The Bible also tells us about Jesus praying in Gethsemane, sweating drops of blood, facing fear and deep solitude. On that difficult night, he didn't receive easy answers, but he chose to stay, to walk through it, to trust. And it was exactly that faithfulness to the process that transformed suffering into redemption, transforming the deep night into the morning of resurrection. Your purpose, so often, is just to remain in the transit, to honor the night, to resist the strong temptation to run away before the time is right. Just allow yourself to feel, to cry, to ask questions without demanding an immediate resolution. It's about trusting that the essential things, things like love, compassion, and truth, are still working. They are still active, even when everything around you seems to be on pause. Allow yourself to walk through your own desert with dignity. Give value to your own path, even if no one else sees it, or even understands it. Meaning reveals itself only to those who choose not to run away, to those who stay, to those who make the difficult threshold, the doorway, into an altar. And when the dawn finally arrives, when clarity returns, you will know that your soul grew in a way that only that long journey could have given you. After the dark night, once the heart has dared not to flee, something new always begins to quietly germinate. There are no fireworks or guarantees that everything will be perfect now, but there is a softness, there is a clarity, a quiet, humble gratitude for having simply resisted the winter of the soul. Jung used to say that these inner rebirths are not just returns to the past, or restorations of what you lost. They are the beginning of a much deeper life. A life that no longer fears pain, because it has learned to find meaning right in the middle of it. The Bible is full of images of this kind of rebirth. The water in the desert, the seed that must die and then sprouts, the prodigal son who returns, the blind man who finally sees, the barren woman who at last gives birth. All these stories speak of life's capacity to reinvent itself, of the mysterious strength that springs forth in the human spirit when everything appears utterly lost. The purpose, then, is no longer to avoid the darkness. It is to learn to trust the light that always comes back. Have you ever felt that unexplainable wave of relief after a long sadness? That moment when, without even searching for it, hope returns. Your energy is reborn. Your gaze softens, and you can finally breathe deeply. Jung called that the return of the soul, the return of vitality and meaning after you have humbly surrendered to the mystery of the night. It isn't a permanent state, but it is deeply real. Every single crisis you cross with honesty leaves a gift behind, a deeper maturity, a compassion that simply didn't exist before. The Bible speaks of new covenants, of renewed promises, of the certainty that God's mercies are renewed every morning. There is a great mystery in this. Life doesn't actually expect you to be perfect. It only asks that you be willing to be reborn. Purpose becomes a constant invitation to begin anew, to open your hands, to let the sacred surprise you, even right after immense loss. Perhaps the greatest miracle is simply this, discovering that after the fall, there is still life. After the wound, there is tenderness, and after the darkness, there is meaning. Jung insisted that true human growth isn't a straight line, it is a spiral. You will revisit the same difficult landscapes, but you are no longer the same person. You have changed. You have grown. You've learned to trust a greater force that holds you, even when everything is shaking. What if your purpose right now was simply to allow yourself to live from this new perspective? To open space for the gentle joy that follows the storm, to share the compassion that bloomed from your most difficult nights with others, to be a living presence for those who are still waiting for their own dawn. The Bible gently invites us to comfort others with the very comfort that we ourselves received. Jung believed that when the soul truly matures, it naturally becomes a source of meaning for others. You stop chasing purpose. Instead, purpose finds you. It simply shows up, manifesting through your life, because you finally opened yourself up to change. Let the sheer gratitude for having made it through the night become your new prayer. Allow the returning light to illuminate not just your path, but also the paths of those walking right beside you. This is how life turns into a circle, a gift, a constant renewal. The moment you truly discover that your pain can transform into a source of comfort for others, your purpose begins to take on a completely new dimension. It stops being solely about your search, your meaning, or your own personal salvation. Something profound shifts when a heart, touched by its own journey, opens up to become an instrument of light for someone else. Jung called this the soul's transcendent function. It's the movement from individuation to communion, from introspection to service. It's the turn that transforms the wound into medicine, loneliness into a bridge, and harsh experience into living wisdom. The Bible reveals this in the story of Joseph, sold by his brothers, betrayed, forgotten, and ultimately becoming the savior of his own people. What seemed like pointless suffering is revealed in time as part of a larger, sweeping design. Joseph says when he reunites with his family, what others meant for evil, God transformed into good. Meaning, then, is much more than a simple, logical explanation. It is the deep certainty, felt and lived, that nothing is ever truly wasted, that every life can be fruitful, and every single story can be redeemed. Maybe along your own path, you felt that your struggles were useless, your nights too long, your mistakes unforgivable. But what if that exact thing, that very struggle, is the secret material? The material the great mystery uses to prepare you to embrace others. What if your own vulnerability, instead of being an obstacle, is the very channel through which the sacred touches other people? Jung strongly insisted that the human soul doesn't heal in isolation. It heals through encounter, through empathy, through recognizing the other person as both a mirror and a companion on the journey. The Bible teaches this through the image of the body, where every part has its function, its dignity, its vital contribution. No one is everything, but no one is nothing either. We simply need one another. Purpose, then, truly blossoms when you stop asking yourself only, "Why me?" and start asking, "For whom can I be life, comfort, inspiration, or company?" This doesn't require grand gestures or spectacular feats. Sometimes, all it takes is a welcoming silence, an attentive ear, the right word, or a timely hug. Jung said the authentic meaning of life is simple in the end: to feel necessary, to feel that your existence has been useful to someone, even in the smallest possible way. The Bible says it again and again: anyone who gives even a glass of water to someone in need will not lose their reward. The deepest purpose is always relational. Meaning expands when you stop focusing only on yourself and truly recognize the pain and the quiet beauty in someone else's eyes. Your life, even with its deep wounds, can still be a lighthouse. Your path, even if it's currently rough and broken, can smooth the way for others. Purpose becomes a network this way. It weaves, it connects, it embraces, and it gives meaning even to what seemed completely irreparable. So, allow yourself to turn your wound into a gift. Allow yourself to give away what you received, to share what you learned, to quietly hold those who are still walking through their darkest night. There is no small calling. There is no useless comfort. Everything adds up. Everything heals. It's all just part of the same quiet river that unites us and carries us along. And then, without even searching for it, one day you will discover that the greatest meaning in life was simply this: to have loved and allowed yourself to be loved, to have touched other souls with the quiet truth of your own journey. There is a deep, comforting humility in realizing that we are not here only for ourselves. In a world that constantly preaches self-sufficiency and competition, daring to need someone else, daring to reach out, to acknowledge our interdependence, that is a truly revolutionary and sacred act. Jung affirmed that the human soul, though it seeks to individuate, never fully realizes itself in solitude. There is a moment when the personal search transforms into an encounter, into communion, into the simple miracle of accompanying and being accompanied. The Bible, right from the first pages, describes the human being as someone created in the image of a God who is inherently relationship, dialogue, and community. It is not good for man to be alone, says Genesis. And that sentence isn't just about finding a romantic partner. It speaks to that deep, profound calling we all have to belong, to be a part of something, to truly recognize ourselves in the other person. Purpose, then, is not an individualistic goal. It is an invisible thread that unites us and calls us to be a living presence wherever there is loneliness or a lack of meaning. Have you ever felt the sheer power of a true encounter? That instant where an honest conversation truly saves you? Where shared sorrow suddenly feels lighter? Where a laugh multiplies just because it was heard and understood? Jung also said that the biggest changes occur in the space between two souls meeting without any masks, in the simple vulnerability of being seen and accepted just as you are. The Bible confirms this. Where two or more gather in my name, there I am among them. Purpose does not demand crowds or grand stages. Often, it is enough just to be faithful to a small circle, to be the invisible support for those immediately around you, to turn your own table into a place of welcome and profound comfort. Jesus, beyond his miracles and teachings, was, above all else, a friend. He shared meals, he walked, he cried, and he celebrated with the people he loved. The Bible suggests that mere presence is often so much more powerful than any words we might say. Just being attentive, being tender, being truthful, that presence alone is an act of deep meaning. Maybe the real miracle we are looking for is this: our life, exactly as it is, becomes the channel for the sacred to touch someone else's existence. You really don't need to be perfect. You definitely don't need to have all the answers. It's enough just to be available. Just open your heart. Let your own story, even the wounded parts, the healed parts, the imperfect parts, let that become the quiet bridge for connection. What if the meaning you are searching for today was simply to listen to someone who is never heard, or to look after the one nobody sees, or just to hold up a friend's spirit without expecting anything back at all? Jung suggested that the soul truly grows in the giving and the receiving. Wholeness comes when, in that silent exchange of gifts, both people, the one who gives and the one who receives, are quietly transformed. The Bible calls this the law of love. Maybe no one has a greater purpose than just living out their life day by day through small, silent gestures. Sometimes the deepest meaning is right there, in stories shared around the kitchen table, in the sound of children laughing, or in that quiet prayer whispered at the end of a difficult day. Allow yourself to be that channel. Allow yourself to be a home. Allow yourself to be an embrace. Because ultimately, the meaning we chase after is often just hidden in the simplest communion, in that "I am with you" that resonates deep in the human heart. There is something mysterious in the way love transforms everything it touches. I'm not talking about that idealized romantic love, but the love that shows up in humble details, in holding someone's gaze, in the patience of the one who stays, in the compassion of the one who cares, even when nobody else sees it. Jung also said that where love reigns, laws are unnecessary. When the soul lives based on love, purpose becomes spontaneous, almost inevitable. Everyday life fills with meaning, even in the middle of the most ordinary things. The Bible speaks of this love as the supreme law, the essence of all commandments. Love your neighbor as yourself. But to truly love another, we must first make peace with our own story. Jung insisted that authentic love is not about merging or dependency, but recognizing in the other a mystery as profound as your own. Only someone who has looked at themselves with honesty and tenderness can look at the world that way. Perhaps, without realizing it, you have been searching all your life for exactly this kind of love. The kind that doesn't demand perfection. The kind that doesn't reject your shadow. The kind that embraces your fragility and turns it into communion. The Bible tells this in the story of the prodigal son, who returns home covered in dust and shame, and is met with a party, an embrace, and new clothes. There are no reproaches. There is no punishment. Only the simple joy of the return, the deep gladness of finding what was lost. Purpose, at its root, is simply coming home, returning to the truth of who you are, the radical acceptance of your own humanity. Jung observed that many deep wounds only begin to heal when someone dares to look at them with love. It is the silent miracle of accompaniment, just staying beside someone without needing words, holding their pain without rushing them, celebrating their small victories without envy. Love lived this way isn't just a feeling, it's a daily decision. Deciding to stay, deciding to return, deciding to care. What if your greatest calling was precisely to love the discarded world? And what if your story, with all its light and shadow, was the fertile ground where you learned to love the unloved, the broken, the imperfect? Jung believed that the person who integrates their shadow becomes more compassionate, more capable of understanding and of forgiving. The Bible calls it mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. In practical terms, purpose is found in simple gestures, not judging someone who fails, offering your time to the lonely, truly listening to someone who no longer expects to be heard. Life, when viewed this way, becomes a tapestry of encounters, a network woven with compassion. Everyone contributes what they are, and everyone receives what they need. Don't demand grandiosity from yourself. Don't try to be a shining example. Just allow yourself to be human, to be vulnerable, to simply be love within the small radius of your own existence. Because it's in that quiet, minimal space where the sacred often reveals itself. The most authentic purpose is the one you can actually touch, the one you offer every day. The purpose that lets you fall asleep with a peaceful heart at the end of the day. Stay in love. Let love be your way of walking, and you'll discover that, even without realizing it, your entire life has become a prayer, a meaning, a silent gift. Maybe no one ever taught you that true love, the kind that sustains life and transforms it, is simply the art of being present. It doesn't need magnificent words or eternal promises. All it takes is the humble decision to stay, to accompany the pain, to celebrate the simple joy of walking beside another person without expecting anything in return. Jung saw this very presence as the root of all healing. What cures is the relationship, he would say. The Bible speaks the same truth in a different language. God is Emmanuel, God with us. It's the mystery of a love that doesn't leave, doesn't abandon, but is embodied in a living presence. Think about how many times you only needed that, just for someone to be there, not trying to fix you, not judging you, not rushing you. Perhaps you've offered that same gift to others, maybe without even realizing it. Because true love gives without calculation, like a seed that falls without knowing where it will grow. Purpose, in this way, becomes invisible, yet it leaves unforgettable marks on the lives you touch. Jung observed that the most powerful symbols, the cross, the circle, the water, the light, don't belong to just one religion. They belong to the human heart. They are signs of what unites us, what embraces diversity, what welcomes contradiction. The Bible uses these same symbols: the table where everyone fits, the water that cleanses and renews, the light that conquers the darkness. Love, as purpose, is that bridge between the human and the divine, between what you dream and what you live, between yesterday and tomorrow. What if your greatest mission was just to sustain that simple flame of presence and tenderness every day? What if your legacy wasn't some grand achievement, but simply the memory of having been there for the one who needed you most? The Bible is filled with anonymous men and women who never sought glory, yet whose lives changed destinies through their simple faithfulness to the small things. The grandmother who passed down a story, the friend who shared their bread, the mother who held her child's tears, the neighbor who opened their door late at night. The meaning found here is humble, but it's unbreakable. It doesn't need recognition, fame, or success. It's that deep feeling in your body, the certainty that you have loved, that you have been a channel of comfort, that your existence was not wasted. Jung would say the soul finds peace when it can look in the mirror and say, "I was faithful to what my heart asked of me." And the Bible tells us, "Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them." There is no higher task, no deeper purpose. In a world hungry for belonging, for meaning, for tenderness, maybe the most revolutionary thing you can do is simply be there, to be present, to accompany. Allow your life to become that meeting place. Let your story, with all its twists and silences, be a shelter where others can finally rest. Because in the end, the deepest meaning is measured in hugs given, in tears shared, and in hands held tight. In a world that applauds the extraordinary, it's so easy to forget that the eternal usually hides itself in the simple things. Jung believed the real greatness of a human being lies in our capacity to make the ordinary sacred. A meal shared, a laugh at sunset, a silence where two hearts understand each other without saying a word. The Bible, with its ancient wisdom, describes how the divine dwells in the tents of the people. It eats with them. It shows up in the breaking of bread, in a cup of water offered, in the quiet comfort given to someone who suffers in secret. Have you ever felt that your life is just too common to have meaning? That your story isn't heroic enough, or your path isn't spectacular enough? Let me tell you, right there, in that humble space, right there in the imperfection of your daily life, the sacred finds its dwelling place. Jesus chose the dinner table, simple friendship, simple work, as the setting for the greatest miracles. Jung found in the self that inner center that unites all parts, light and shadow. It is the deepest source of meaning, the root from which everything can be transformed. Purpose, from this perspective, isn't about conquering the world. It's about learning to inhabit yourself with dignity, to live each day as though you are tending to a small, sacred temple. The Bible calls this being faithful in the small things, trusting that the details, the anonymous gestures, your daily choices, they all hold eternal value when they are made from a place of love. The person who waters a plant, who clears the dinner table, who listens closely to a child, who offers a hug without expecting applause, they are already fulfilling a purpose as high as any visible achievement. Jung warned that most conflicts of the soul are born from forgetting the essential, the rush to arrive, the fear of being insignificant. But when you stop, when you breathe, and look around with gratitude, everything changes. Your weariness becomes an offering. Routine becomes a quiet ritual. Your silent work becomes prayer. What if your only task today was to bless the moment you are living? What if your story, with its mixture of light and doubt, was already a love letter written by the mystery itself? The Bible teaches that every tear is counted. Every small act of kindness is remembered. Every step taken in faithfulness leaves invisible tracks in eternity. So, purpose is not something you have to seek outside yourself. It is a daily decision to look with new eyes, to be grateful for the simple things, to be true to yourself. It is about allowing your life, just as it is, to be the meeting place between the human and the divine. Stay right here, in what you are, in what you have. Nurture your small world with a great love, because from the center of what is simple, a wave of meaning expands, reaching far beyond what you can even imagine. There is a secret depth in accepting life exactly as it is. No masks, no frills. Without that pressure to appear like more, to achieve more, to constantly be someone else. Jung suggested that the greatest act of courage is embracing your own humanity, with all your limits, your doubts, and your quiet, modest beauty. The Bible reflects this too. It tells stories of ordinary people, fishers, farmers, strangers, children, the elderly. None were born heroes. None understood everything instantly. They all, somehow, had to learn to simply trust, to stay put, to let purpose weave itself through their seemingly normal days. Maybe you've been told that you have to completely transform yourself to be worthwhile, that your life is only significant if you manage to change the world or leave a mark in the history books. But what if the deepest meaning is simply accepting the gift of being, right here, right now? Jung used to say that the self reveals itself when you stop chasing after someone else's ideals and instead, you come home. Home to that silent center where you can finally say, I am okay, just like this. Even when you don't understand everything, even when you don't have all the answers. The Bible tells the story of Martha and Mary. One was busy, worried about her duties. The other simply sat at Jesus' feet, listening. Both are necessary. But Jesus told Martha that Mary had chosen the better part, the one that wouldn't be taken away from her. This is a powerful symbol. Meaning isn't always found in frantic doing. Sometimes it's in being present, in knowing how to receive, in the quiet confidence that the essential work happens even in the pause. Have you ever felt guilty for resting, for stopping the search, and simply breathing? Maybe your soul needed that permission just to inhabit itself, to recover its strength, to look at life with a little more tenderness. Jung reminded us that moments of silence, of simple leisure, of contemplation, are medicine for the modern spirit. The Bible also invites us to rest. The Sabbath, the Jubilee. These sacred pauses allow the earth and the heart to recover their fertility. The purpose, from this quiet place, is learning to say yes to who you are, to what you have, to the story that brought you here. Not as resignation, but as active gratitude. It's the decision to honor your own existence, to care for that small world you've been given, to love those who are near, to offer your presence as the greatest gift. What if your meaning today was simply to be alive and conscious, to look at the morning sun, to hear a bird sing, to share a gentle moment? The Bible calls this today, the only real time where the sacred meets the human. Jung confirmed it. The fullness of life is found in every moment well lived. Allow yourself this peace. Do not run. Do not demand that you must be someone else. Purpose arrives soft and deep when you allow life to simply be what it is, and you are exactly who you are, with all the love possible. There is a quiet, serene freedom in accepting what cannot be changed. Jung affirmed that much of human suffering is born from resisting our own reality, from fighting against what simply is. The Bible repeats that call to surrender and trust. Let each day be enough for its own worries. Do not worry about tomorrow. Purpose, you see, isn't a heavy burden at all. It's what gently rises up when your soul finally relaxes, when your body takes a truly deep breath, when your mind allows itself to let go of the steering wheel just for a moment. How many times have you fought with yourself, trying to force certain feelings, trying to hide those vulnerable parts, trying to rush internal processes just so you could feel accepted, or more correct, or perhaps just more like everyone else? Maybe the invitation today is different. Maybe it's about letting go, allowing life to be like a river. It flows, even when it hits stones. It finds new paths without violence, with a quiet confidence that, sooner or later, it will reach the sea. Jung used to say that when we let go of control, we open ourselves up to the self, that inner center where the great mystery lives, where life stops being just a repetition of the past, or an anxious fear of the future, and simply becomes presence, open to this very hour. The Bible speaks of something similar through the words of Jesus. Do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or what you will drink. Your Father already knows what you need. It's a profound invitation to trust that existence is upheld by a wisdom far greater than our own, a wisdom that operates even when we can't see it working. Purpose isn't found in grand, complicated plans. It's found in the simple art of listening, of perceiving the small signals, of responding with quiet courage and a deep humility to the small and large calls of every single day. It's possible that by relaxing the constant demand to control everything, you might discover a brand new relief, a gentle clarity, a spontaneous joy. Maybe it's time to ask your own heart, what exactly am I trying so hard to control? What could I simply trust instead? Which part of my life is begging for surrender, begging for a breath, begging for patience? Jung also taught that healing often doesn't come through effort, but through surrender. Allowing the unconscious, that sacred ground where purpose grows, to work in its own time, without pressure. The Bible is full of stories of people who found meaning precisely when they stopped fighting alone. Hannah, weeping in the temple, and finally surrendering her desire. The psalmist, confessing their anguish and choosing to wait. Mary, who faced the utterly inexplicable and simply said, "Let it be done to me according to your word." Purpose sprouts right there, in that quiet space between acceptance and hope. Allow yourself to rest in who you are right now. Allow yourself not to know, not to understand, not to be perfect. The meaning of life isn't about being a heroine every day. It's about being faithful to your own unique journey, to your questions, to your very own path. Because as the Bible says, all things work together for good for those who love. And perhaps one day, you'll look back and notice that when you stopped fighting life, life was finally able to flow. And right alongside it, your true purpose emerged. Sometimes life feels like a path wrapped in fog. You cannot see what lies ahead. You can barely make out the next step. But that's enough. Jung believed the unconscious often guides us through feelings, dreams, and symbols, things we don't always grasp right away. The Bible speaks to this same mystery. Your word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path. Notice it doesn't promise you'll see the entire journey. It only promises enough light for this very moment. In those times of deepest uncertainty, the heart truly learns humility. You start to realize you can't map out every detail. Not everything depends on your effort. There are forces, both visible and invisible, working right alongside you. Jung suggested that when the fog thickens and anxiety rises, the wisest thing isn't to desperately fight for clarity. Instead, we must learn to listen, to wait, to trust. That fog is not your enemy. It's a veil that protects you, slowing you down, forcing you to stop and look inward. The Bible tells the story of Abraham leaving his home without knowing where he was headed. He had no maps, just a promise. Just the faith that each step brought him closer to a purpose greater than his own understanding. This, my friend, is the journey of the soul. It's a daily act of faith, a repeated yes, even when everything feels uncertain. What if the fog you're in today is life's way of teaching you to release the need to control? What if purpose reveals itself precisely in that trust, in the quiet willingness, in the patience of walking step by step, without demanding certainties that aren't ready to arrive yet? Jung said true spiritual maturity begins when you stop asking for external guarantees and learn to rest in the mystery itself. The Bible calls this living by faith, not by sight. It's not passive resignation. It's a form of active hope. You keep moving forward. You keep listening. You keep choosing life every single day, even when you don't have all the answers. During these foggy periods, you might feel tempted to retreat, to go back to what's known, to settle for the old security. But there's something deep inside you, that spark Jung called the self and the Bible calls the spirit, that keeps pushing you forward. It reminds you that there is something more, that you haven't seen everything yet, that your story hasn't finished. Allow yourself to live in the fog with tenderness. Take care of yourself. Look for the company of those who can walk with you without rushing you, without judging you, without demanding that you see what you simply cannot see yet. Purpose is also about this: learning to live in the thresholds, honoring the seasons of confusion, embracing not knowing as an essential part of the journey. One day, when the fog lifts, you will see that every step, every pause, every moment of doubt had its reason. The meaning of life is often built in the patience and trust it takes to walk even when you don't have a map. Sometimes we were taught to fear confusion, as if absolute clarity were a right or a mandatory goal. But Jung and the Bible agree on something profound. Chaos can be the beginning of new creation. In the beginning, the earth was formless and empty, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. The mystery's first act wasn't to establish order immediately. It was to dwell in the chaos, to move through it, to simply be there. Perhaps your confusion, your aimless days, your unanswered questions, maybe this is the fertile ground where meaning is quietly taking shape. Jung called this the alchemical process. Before you find that inner gold, the material has to go through stages: decay, darkness, deep uncertainty. There is no true purpose without first passing through that night of not knowing, the exhaustion of not understanding, the pain of letting go of old certainties. The Bible tells us this story in the Exodus. Before reaching the Promised Land, there was the desert. There was hunger, exhaustion, doubt. Meaning emerges precisely when you allow yourself not to skip any stage, when you truly honor the process itself as part of the miracle. Have you ever felt out of place? Disconnected from everything that once gave you meaning? Did you judge yourself for not having clear answers? For not being able to explain what you feel? Jung suggested that the true journey begins when you stop demanding things that life simply cannot give, and you accept that the spiritual passage includes fog. It includes chaos. It includes moments when all that's left is pure trust. Scripture teaches us that the greatest encounters often happen right on the threshold of confusion. Jacob wrestled in the night, not even understanding who he was fighting, and at dawn, he received a new name. Moses, lost in the desert, saw the fire that wasn't consumed and received his mission. Mary, disturbed by the angel's announcement, responded with a question: "How can this be?" Meaning, then, isn't a single light that instantly clears all the darkness. It's a glow that grows slowly within the doubt, a soft voice that stays with you when no one else understands. Allow yourself not to know. Allow yourself to feel. Allow yourself to ask. Purpose isn't revealed like some simple formula. It's a living relationship between your own story and the great mystery. Sometimes, only after passing through the chaos can you look back and genuinely thank every single moment of uncertainty. Because that's where humility was born, where patience and faith found their roots. Don't be afraid of your process. Don't demand more clarity than you can hold right now. Meaning is cooked slowly, over a low flame, like bread fermenting while it waits, like the seed sleeping under the earth until it's time to bloom. Just stay here. Keep breathing. Keep opening yourself to the miracle of your own confusion, because in ways you cannot yet imagine, purpose is silently growing right in the middle of the mess. The human soul has a deep nostalgia for home, a secret yearning for belonging, for roots, for a place, internal or external, where it can rest without fear, without masks, without needing to prove anything at all. Jung said that the entire process of individuation, the whole psychological and spiritual journey, is fundamentally a return, not back to the past, but back to that living center where you can finally declare, "This is who I am," and feel completely at peace. The Bible tells the story of this return in hundreds of ways. The people leaving Egypt searching for their land. The prodigal son coming back, covered in dust and shame. The lost sheep found by the shepherd. These are all symbols of the inner journey. Purpose is not just about discovering what you need to do in the world, but about remembering who you are, who you belong to. Which voice is singing deepest inside your core? Perhaps for a long time, you looked for meaning in goals, in achievements, in relationships, in external approval. Perhaps you lost yourself trying to fit in, fulfilling expectations, hiding parts of yourself that you were afraid others wouldn't understand. Jung used to warn us, the greatest exile isn't being far from home, but being far from yourself. The Bible agrees, doesn't it? What good is it for a person to gain the whole world if they lose their own soul? But this return home isn't a quick fix. It's a slow process. It's about listening to yourself again, reconnecting with your own story, embracing both your wounds and your gifts. It's about making peace, reconciling with your light and your shadow. It means allowing yourself to belong completely to yourself without needing to ask for permission or forgiveness. You know deep down that everything you've lived through, even the mistakes, even the chaos, it all belongs. It's part of the larger tapestry that the mystery is weaving with you. Have you allowed yourself to come back yet? To ask yourself, what do I really need today? What truly hurts? What makes me feel alive? What am I missing? And what can I let go of? Jung suggested writing, dreaming, creating, meditating, seeking spaces of inhabited solitude, a quiet place where you can finally distinguish the voice of your soul from all the world's noise. The Bible calls this entering your inner room, closing the door, praying in silence. Because the truest meaning doesn't arrive in the crowd, it comes in that intimate meeting with the sacredness that lives inside you. Purpose, from this perspective, is just a slow, tender return to your center. It's forgiving yourself for getting lost along the way. It's celebrating the reunion. It means taking care of yourself the way you would care for a tired child coming home after a very long trip. No one can tell you exactly how to do this. It's a unique dance, totally yours, totally unrepeatable. But you can start today with just one step, a single pause, a sincere question, an inner caress, an act of deep self-listening. And in that process, little by little, you will realize that home was never that far away, that there was always a voice waiting, a hug available, a reserved seat at the table of the mystery just for you. Because in the end, the real purpose is simple, to come back home, to come back to yourself, and there discover the very source of all life. There is a moment on the journey when, after searching so much outside yourself, you finally realize that the essential things were always inside. It isn't a sudden discovery, it's a slow understanding that matures over time, forged by disillusionments, losses, searches, and long silences. Jung called that moment the discovery of the self, the most intimate, unchangeable, and vibrant core of your being, the place where the divine spark and your humanity finally embrace. The Bible expresses this return through the image of the renewed heart. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. This isn't about changing your personality or erasing your history. It's about allowing life to renew itself from the deepest place, allowing the pain to transform into wisdom. Allow your scars to tell a different version of your journey. Purpose, then, stops being a distant goal. It becomes presence. Just being here, feeling, breathing, being grateful for life exactly as it is, with all its beauty and all its contradictions. Maybe no one ever taught you how to look inward with tenderness. Perhaps you learned only to demand things of yourself, to correct yourself, to compete, to feel like you were never enough. Jung said that the shadow, that part of you that is denied, rejected, or feared, can only ever be integrated through love. The scriptures confirm it. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. You cannot force yourself into reconciliation. Only compassion, patience, and forgiveness can truly lead you back home. What if, just for today, you stopped fighting against who you are? What if you looked at your imperfections with the same tenderness you offer a loved one? When viewed this way, the meaning of life isn't a burden or a race, it's a gift. Every day is a fresh chance to begin again, to return to yourself, to find that secret altar within your heart, the imprint of the divine. Think about the story of the prodigal son. When he finally returned, the father didn't ask for explanations. He ran to meet him. He embraced him. He restored his dignity and celebrated his return. This is the great mystery. It is always waiting, always welcoming, always celebrating your journey back. Carl Jung often said that the unconscious, that quiet guardian of your soul, doesn't punish mistakes. Instead, it invites you, again and again, toward reunion, integration, and wholeness. Perhaps your only purpose today is this: to return to your heart, to embrace your story, to simply honor the miracle of being alive. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to solve everything. Just be available. Open your soul to whatever arises. Trust that the path continues to reveal meaning with every small step you take. In this humble, open attitude, you will discover that the real home is you, that the mystery lives deep inside your being, and that every day, no matter how ordinary it seems, is a chance to start fresh. Maybe the greatest act of faith isn't believing in impossible things. Maybe it's daring to believe in yourself, especially right where you feel least capable, most vulnerable, and most exhausted. Jung taught us that the true miracle is not the absence of pain. It is the transformation of pain into meaning, fear into wisdom, shadow into a source of life. Scripture captures this same paradox. When I am weak, then I am strong. It's a truth only understood when you have lived through the dark night of the soul. How many times have you judged yourself for not being enough, for failing, for not moving as quickly as everyone else? But what if your rhythm is sacred? What if your process is already perfect just as it is? Jung insisted that every person has a unique path toward their center. There are no identical routes, no exact timelines, no universal manuals. The scriptures confirm this too. Every story is different. Every encounter is unique. Every promise unfolds in its own way, in its own time. Maybe the biggest lesson we learn is simply letting go of the demand to be like anyone else and daring to just be. Purpose reveals itself in the most honest gestures, in humble perseverance, in the quiet willingness to begin again and again and again. The Bible tells the story of Ruth, a poor, widowed foreign woman who, without knowing it, became an indispensable link in a much bigger story. She wasn't a queen, a prophetess, or a leader. She was simply faithful in the small things. She walked at her own pace. She loved without holding back. What if your life already holds meaning, even if it doesn't fit the molds of external success? What if your mission is to care for what is close to you, to hold on to hope in the invisible things, to be a quiet home for others? Jung called this living from the self, being faithful to your own truth, not out of pride, but out of humility. The Bible calls it bearing fruit in its proper season. It means trusting that every stage has its value, that even the waiting periods are part of a greater purpose. Allow yourself the sweetness of simply being who you are, of loving your story, of walking at your own rhythm. Embrace the burdens you carry, the doubts you have, your need to constantly start anew. Because in that humble gesture, in that quiet faithfulness to the small things, you are already fulfilling the deepest part of your mission. You don't need to change the world to be significant. It is enough to allow yourself to be transformed, to open yourself to life each day, to look at the mystery in the mirror and whisper, "I am here. I am ready to walk." Purpose, lived this way, stops being a burden and becomes a promise. A promise that as long as you remain true to yourself, everything else will reveal itself in its own time. As the years pass, many people discover that the deepest meaning is not found in grand achievements, but in those small, daily acts of loyalty. Jung affirmed that human fullness, that sense of completion, is born from integrity, that silent art of being coherent with what you think, what you feel, and what you do, even if no one else is watching. The Bible, through its language of symbols and stories, shows us repeatedly how the divine chooses the simple, the hidden, the things that hold no outward shine to the world, and makes the sacred germinate there. Think of the widow who offered 2 small coins in the temple, or the servant who multiplied their small talent, or the faithful friend who accompanies you even through the darkest night. All of them were great in their own way, not because they sought greatness, but because they remained firm in the small things, in what was given to them, without denying their own story. Jung used to say that authenticity is the rarest and most necessary treasure. Being yourself, without apology, without betraying your own soul. What if your greatest legacy were the simple tenderness with which you care for what no one else sees? What if your true worth rests in your constancy, in your capacity to start over, in the courage to remain when everyone else leaves? The Bible calls this faithfulness. Not spectacular success, but patient surrender. The hope that refuses to fade. The love that stays even when there are no guarantees. Purpose, viewed this way, is less an exploit and more a disposition of the heart. Jung taught that the person who reconciles with themselves, who embraces their own shadow and honors their own pace, effortlessly becomes a transformative presence for others, not because of what they say, but simply because of who they are. The Bible confirms this. You are the salt of the earth, the light of the world. Not because you are perfect, but because by being authentic, you allow the light of the mystery to shine right through you. Perhaps the greatest meaning is simply this: to be faithful to your own journey, to hold the inner flame steady even when everything outside turns dark, to be a house for others, built from your own inner home. The world needs fewer heroes and more real people willing to love in the small ways, to care for the invisible, to bless the everyday moments. Please, do not underestimate the power of your presence, the strength of your story, or the lasting imprint of your faithfulness. Every act of love, every honest gesture, every silence you maintain is a seed of eternity. Just stay. Trust the process unfolding around you. Be gentle with yourself, because in that constancy, day after day, the purpose gently reveals itself. And your life, almost without you noticing, becomes a gift. Somewhere along this journey, you might just discover that the deepest meaning comes when you stop searching outside for what can only bloom from within. Carl Jung used to say that every true spiritual awakening is essentially just a return to your own center, that inner place, where, far from the noise and far from the expectations of others, you can finally hear the voice of your soul and the mystery itself. You see this echoed in so many stories of retreat and silence: Moses on the mountain, Elijah in the cave, Jesus in the desert, Mary meditating quietly in her heart. We live in a world absolutely saturated with stimuli, opinions, and promises of instant happiness. But true depth, true transformation, it asks for space. It asks for silence. It asks us to listen. Jung warned that only those who dare to remain alone with themselves, without distraction, can truly distinguish between their authentic voice and the echoes of others. The Bible calls this entering the secret, that sacred space where the soul dialogues with the divine, without witnesses, without masks. Have you ever allowed yourself to just sit in silence with yourself? To listen to what your heart is holding back? To feel what your body is truly asking for? To name your deepest, most profound questions? Perhaps at first, you'll feel fear, restlessness, the temptation to run back toward the external noise. But if you just persevere, if you stay, even for just one moment longer, you'll discover that in that emptiness there is no punishment. There is refuge. There is no loneliness. There is presence. Jung called this meeting the union with the self, that inner core where identity and meaning embrace each other, where purpose no longer depends on results or recognition, but simply on the fullness of being. The Bible confirms this. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. It is in that space of trust and waiting where wounds begin to heal, where exhaustion turns into rest, where life stops being a race and becomes communion. Purpose, from this place, is a soft melody, one you can only hear when you turn down the noise. It is the peace of knowing that even when everything changes outside, there is a place you can always return to, a center that no one can take away from you, a divine spark that holds your entire being. This isn't about withdrawing from the world. It's about inhabiting the world from another depth, from an unbreakable root. Allow yourself this pause. Gift yourself moments of silence, honesty, and deep self-listening. Don't fear what you find there. Everything that arises in your heart is sacred material, worthy of love and patience. Real meaning reveals itself when you dare to look inside and discover in your deepest parts that you were never alone. This is how your life becomes a living prayer, a silent testament that the mystery dwells within the human experience, that purpose is not about getting somewhere, but about being truly present here, inhabiting this very instant with an open soul. When you stay in silence, something begins to shift from within. At first, it might feel uncomfortable, as if your mind is resisting, as if your body doesn't quite know what to do with so much stillness. But slowly, if you have patience, the silence becomes a fertile space. This is where intuitions surface. Feelings become clearer. Old memories, and new dreams too, begin to emerge. Jung taught us something important. The unconscious isn't an enemy or a threat. It's actually an ally, a keeper of treasures and messages, if you just allow yourself to listen without judgment. Think about the Bible. It's full of moments where meaning appears right after a time of silence or withdrawal. Jesus, after 40 days in the desert, came out with a renewed clarity and strength. The prophet Elijah, exhausted and afraid, found God not in the earthquake or the fire, but in the soft whisper of the breeze. Meaning doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just whispers. Sometimes it arrives as a peace you can't quite explain, an inner certainty that needs no external proof. Maybe no one has ever told you that it's okay not to have words, that silence is also a form of prayer, that simply listening to your own heartbeat is honoring the life that pulses within you. Jung believed that the soul needs simple rituals, lighting a candle, breathing mindfully, writing down a dream, sitting quietly to watch the sunset. These are small gestures. When repeated honestly, they open doors to mystery, to consolation, to quiet revelation. What if, just for today, you gave yourself permission to quiet the noise, to turn off the demands, to suspend the urgency, to simply be with yourself, in communion with this moment? The Bible calls this tasting and seeing that the Lord is good. It's an invitation to savor life, to feel it with all your senses, to discover meaning, not in complex ideas, but in the living experience of every day. From this perspective, purpose is less a destination. It is more a way of being present, receptive, open to whatever life wants to show you. You won't always find immediate answers. Sometimes the most valuable thing is the question that keeps echoing, the stillness that helps you breathe deeper, the gentle certainty that, no matter what happens, there is a secret order guiding your steps. Jung advised keeping a diary for the soul, noting down dreams, intuitions, small, everyday miracles. The Bible recommends keeping words close to your heart, letting them mature over time, trusting that meaning reveals itself to those who know how to wait, to those who honor the mystery of the process. Allow yourself to be a garden, fertile ground, a temple inhabited by silence and by hope. Don't try to control the blooming, just tend the soil, water it patiently. Trust the wisdom of time itself. Purpose, when approached this way, becomes organic, natural. It grows from the inside out, manifesting effortlessly in the world. And one day, without even realizing it, you will discover that life, just as it is right now, is already prayer. It is already meaning. It is already the answer. With time, you realize that purpose isn't about grand revelations or spectacular discoveries. It's about a simple, quiet faithfulness to what the moment asks of you. Jung said the soul is strengthened when it learns to respond honestly to the needs of the day, even if those needs seem small or unimportant. The Bible confirms this in the way Jesus allowed himself to be interrupted. He never scorned those who sought him out. He never considered another person's suffering trivial. He was never too busy to listen. Maybe you felt that quiet frustration, the feeling that you haven't found your great calling yet, that you aren't special or destined for huge, visible things. But what if your purpose was just that simple humility, serving right here, with what you have in your hand? Life is truly built on these small moments, on gestures that seem totally invisible. It's that constant daily care, that quiet sum of effort, that is what truly transforms the world and the human heart. Carl Jung observed that the soul's deepest dreams often show up in everyday symbols. Think about it. The water that calms your thirst, the home that offers refuge, the food that sustains you, the hand that gently strokes your cheek. It's no accident that the Bible is full of gatherings, of meals shared at a table, of simple miracles performed with just bread and wine, or fish and water. Purpose, you see, is embodied in what is real, in what is touchable, in what is utterly simple. What if the true meaning of your life was simply to make the ordinary sacred? Preparing breakfast with true care, listening intently to someone you love, holding on to hope even during gray days, caring for a simple houseplant, forgiving an offense, hugging someone who is weeping. No gesture is ever too small when it truly comes from the heart. The Scripture confirms this. Whoever is faithful in little things will be faithful in much. Maybe you ask yourself if this is truly enough, if you shouldn't be doing something bigger, something that leaves a massive mark. Jung would tell you that the soul grows internally, in silence, and when the time is right, what you quietly sowed in the small moments will blossom into the great ones. Please, don't try to jump stages. Allow life to carry you, step by step, season by season. Trust that the greater meaning reveals itself in the whole picture, not just in one single moment. Allow yourself to honor what you are living right now, even if it feels small. Give dignity to your day. Give meaning to your routine tasks. Give soul to your words. Purpose is, above all, a way of being, with gratitude, with deep humility, and with availability. This way, every single day is enough. This way, every moment can become an open door to the sacred. Life doesn't demand perfection from you, only presence. Meaning isn't a final destination. It's simply a way of walking. Maybe, when you look back, you'll realize that the search for meaning wasn't a straight, linear path. It was an internal spiral. You returned 1,000 times to the same questions. You fell down, and you got back up. You learned to let go, to trust, to simply stay suspended in the uncertainty. Jung said that life is one continuous process of integration. Every stage, every mistake, every joy, and every shadow, They are all necessary threads in the magnificent tapestry of your existence. And the ancient texts confirm this truth. Everything works together for the good of those who love, even the things you didn't understand, even the pain that felt completely absurd. Purpose, when we look at it this way, isn't a distant finish line, and it's not a single clear answer. It's simply an attitude, a quiet way of being in the world. It requires humility, openness, and the deep faith that the sacred lives in everything. Jung called this individuation. It's the slow, steady maturity of becoming completely yourself, so that from that whole place you can truly embrace others and embrace life itself. The Bible expresses this through the call to love. Love God above all things, and love your neighbor as yourself. Every meaning, every search, every destiny, it all settles into that dual movement, the movement inward and the movement of giving outward. Maybe you'll never receive some grand revelation. Maybe you won't get an exact map of the path ahead. But if you stay faithful to your own internal process, you will learn to read the small signs. You'll learn to trust in providence. You'll learn how to simply rest in the presence of what is. The mature soul understands that meaning is never forced upon us. Instead, it is discovered, it is received, it is cultivated, day after quiet day, in the mystery of the ordinary. The Bible tells us, "I will whisper words of life to your heart." And Jung adds, "The fullest life is the one that is faithful to itself, even if others cannot understand it." What if the meaning of your life wasn't some achievement? What if it wasn't a final goal? What if it was just the way you look at things, the way you care, the way you reconcile, the way you give thanks, and the way you share? What if your true calling was to make the divine human and the human divine? To finally reconcile with your own history and offer it up as a gift? The Bible and Jung, each in their own way, arrive at the same quiet certainty. Purpose is revealed through communion. It's found in the deep, peaceful knowing that you are part of a whole. You are accompanied. You are held. You are loved. Allow yourself to rest in this truth. Allow yourself to trust, to let go, to begin again as many times as you need to. You are already, right now, part of a greater story. Your life has meaning, even when your mind doubts it, even when the world doesn't see it. You are unique. You are irreplaceable. You are a quiet carrier of light.